Hey guys, I'm Yuruzi. Part 2 of What If Naruto sends himself back in time to fix his mistakes. Naruto, at 26, has lived through 10 years of war. At the end, with nothing left to call home, he sends himself back to the beginning, to the day of his younger self's graduation, in an attempt to change it all. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 3, Interlude, An Evening of Introductions. Welcome home, Haruki-san. Blinking tiredly, Haruki turned to see a familiar blonde bound up to him, blue eyes wide, a bright smile already splitting his features. Only the faintest traces of uncertainty lurked just under the surface of that expression, and that too quickly dissipated when Haruki openly smiled down at the boy. Hello duckling, I didn't expect to see you so soon. Did you pass your genin test? Naruto beamed up at him. Haruki reached out and ruffled the boy's hair as Naruto broke off for air. Breathe, Naruto-kun. What happened next? Naruto grinned sheepishly up at him but quickly launched back into the story. So I was tied to the tree stump as punishment while Sasuke and Sakura-chan got to eat the lunches. Sensei told them they couldn't feed me and then he left, but he came back and passed us when Sasuke and Sakura-chan gave me some of their lunches. The blonde frowned a little and peered curiously up at the redhead. He told us that those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He passed us because the three of us stuck up for each other. How did you know he would? Haruki's smile faded, absently withdrawing his hand. Perhaps he had revealed a little too much that day. I didn't really, he spoke carefully. But teams can't work well together without teamwork. Most senseis would want to see their genin team have some ability in working together. Naruto still looked a little puzzled, but his expression cleared in the next moment, accepting this explanation easily. Well, I think what you said before you left really helped. Sasuke-tem's being less of a team and Sakura-chan is being nicer to me. But Kakashi-sensei gets this weird look on his face sometimes. The blonde frowned in concentration and somehow managed to look confused and ticked off at the same time. He also looked a bit like he had been concussed, and Haruki neatly tucked away the amusement threatening to make itself known. And he's only been around an hour late every day. Haruki considered this for a moment. Had he really made that much of a difference? He had only said a few words, but if Kakashi had taken notice of this to the extent that even Naruto had noticed Kakashi's interest, and Sarutobi had even warned him that he would most likely be accosted by the Kapinin sometime soon, then the team dynamics of Team 7 must have really changed. All the better, Haruki decided, running a hand through his hair. Team 7 needed to create strong bonds before the Chunin exams, especially Sasuke. Well, maybe you'll see your sensei around soon, Haruki replied aloud. He sounds interesting. I'd like to meet him. That wasn't actually the entire truth. The last time he had seen Hatake Kakashi had been over 2 years ago on the battlefield. The man had eventually been overwhelmed by enemy forces where he had been stationed and his Sharingan had burned out. He had fallen at the hands of Madara himself, but not before taking down an entire encampment of Otonin single-handedly. Kakashi had died in his arms, and his last words to Haruki while choking on his own blood had been an apology for failing to save the redhead's genin team. Kakashi's death had hit Konoha hard and Haruki even harder. The Kapinin had died with regrets, and Haruki had lost another of the handful of people he had been particularly close to. To see him now, alive and healthy and still unmarred by the bloodiest war in all of shinobi history, but not his Kakashi, would hurt. This Kakashi didn't know him, didn't trust him, not like his time's Kakashi whom he had been able to talk to and confide in, and vice versa. In front of him, Naruto was already nodding enthusiastically. Sensei will be coming by tonight. For some reason, he really wants to meet you. Haruki frowned. I guess that's all right. He allowed reluctantly. But I should probably get some rest now. I haven't slept in days. What time is he coming? Naruto rocked back on his heels. He said 8. I don't know if that means he's actually going to arrive at 8 though. Haruki considered this before shrugging and moving to his apartment door. Doesn't matter. He'll be up before then. Just knock on my door when he gets here, alright? Naruto nodded, unlocking his own apartment. Sure. You must be tired after your mission. Sorry for keeping you out here. Haruki waved a dismissive hand as he stepped into his apartment. Don't worry about it, duckling. I'll see you later. He smiled at the wave he received in return before closing the door behind him and stifling a yawn. He didn't really want to sleep. He hadn't wanted to sleep for a long time, but he had felt tired for just as long. He couldn't physically remember the last time his body had been free of the heavy weariness that insisted on making itself at home in his very bones. With a heavy sigh, Haruki tossed his scrolls on the coffee table and placed his shuriken, kunai, and katana aside. Not bothering to change out of his ninja wear or make the trip to the bedroom, the redhead simply dropped onto the couch, throwing an arm over his eyes but making sure he would still have a clear view of the front door. A short nap should be all right. If he was lucky, the nightmares would leave him alone for a little while. Hokage-sama, you wish to speak to me? Sarutobi glanced up with a smile as Hyuga Hayashi stepped into the office, quietly closing the door behind him. The Sandame quickly activated the privacy seals before standing and coming out from around his desk. I did, Sarutobi nodded. I will get right to the point as we may be short on time. You recall the Hyuga affair 9 years ago, of course? Hayashi's already stony countenance shuddered completely. Of course. The affirmation was clipped and cold, but Sarutobi paid it no mind. 8 years ago, the Sandame continued carefully. He and Hizashi had worked out an abridged version of the recent events before summoning Hayashi to the tower. I sent a spy to Kumo to make sure nothing like it would ever happen again. A week ago, that spy came back, bringing with him some very startling news. Hayashi stiffened at this. Will Kumo try again? Sarutobi quickly shook his head in the negative. No, it isn't that. It seems Kumo has been keeping a secret of great magnitude from the rest of the world and, after my spy relayed the information to me, I sent him back out to retrieve that secret. He has just returned with him earlier today. He paused here, glancing at his private office. I believe showing you would be best. Hizashi-san. Out of the corner of his eye, Sarutobi watched the Hyuga clan head freeze, eyes widening when the small office's door opened and Hizashi stepped out, face calm but an almost amused gleam in his eyes, mixed with a healthy amount of concern as the two brothers stared at each other. It has been a while, Ni-san. Hizashi hesitated when Hayashi made no move to even speak, only continuing to stare at him, his face having paled considerably. The younger twin glanced wryly at the Hokage. Perhaps you should have told him first, after all. Sarutobi shrugged unrepentantly. He rarely ever saw any of the stiff clan heads acting out of character and he needed his own way of keeping himself entertained, Hokage or no. Ni-san, it's me. Are you alright? Hizashi stepped closer and Hayashi finally seemed to pull himself together, rounding on the Hokage with a mixture of confusion and anger blazing in his eyes. What is the meaning of this, Hokage-sama? The clan head bit out, jaw tight. This is not my brother. Hizashi died 9 years ago. Sarutobi raised his hand in a calming gesture and briefly considered calling Haruki back to explain but decided against it. The redhead was still too thin in his eyes and the shadows that he had seen on the man's face when Haruki first arrived had only deepened. He hoped some rest would do him good. Hayashi-san, I assure you, this is your brother. My spy happens to be adept at Fuinjutsu and has assured me that the coffin your brother was found in had a life suspension seal placed on it. He managed to break the seal and bring Hizashi-san back safely only hours ago. Kumo managed to save your brother's life after realizing what the caged bird seal would do upon his death and has kept him alive but unconscious ever since while letting the rest of the world believe him to be dead. Hayashi took this in with a heavy frown as he glanced between Sarutobi and his brother. Seeing this, Hizashi stepped forward again and bared his throat, letting the older of the two see the obvious scar marring his skin. I am real, Ni-san, Hizashi reassured softly. And I am back. Hayashi continued staring at his twin, eyeing the scar before glancing at the curse seal that, without a hitayate, stood out clearly on Hizashi's forehead. The clan head almost stumbled forward a step, unable to look away as if mesmerized. What was the last thing you asked me to do before you took my place 9 years ago? The man's voice was nearly a whisper. Hizashi smiled ever so slightly. I asked you to tell Niji why I chose to take your place. He paused in thought. Though knowing you, you probably have not done so out of some sort of misplaced guilt dash. He was cut off suddenly when Hayashi did stumble forward this time, one hand hovering in front of his younger twin as if afraid that touching him would prove everything to be nothing but a genjutsu. Mere seconds later, the hand reached out and closed tightly around Hizashi's arm, dragging the startled man into a desperate hug. Several feet away, Sarutobi turned to look out the window to give the two men some semblance of privacy. A smile broke out on his face. It had been a long time since Hayashi had shown any outward emotion. He ignored the quiet murmurs behind him as the two Hyugas exchanged words and went over the plan in his head instead. The sound of someone politely clearing their throat behind him caused Sarutobi to turn back, his smile lingering when he saw Hayashi standing with his hands at his side once more, Hizashi a half-step beside him. Both were composed again, though far more relaxed, and an invisible weight seemed to have been lifted from the Hyuga clan head's shoulders. "Could you please explain the circumstances, Hokage-sama?" Hayashi restarted, voice somehow warmer while still retaining the neutral formality he typically used. Sarutobi nodded, moving back around his desk. "Obviously, the fact that I sent one of my shinobi into Kumo cannot be revealed. My spy came up with a plan that should cover this truth, and we, Hizashi-san and I, believe that this is the version we should give the council." Quickly, Sarutobi recounted the plan Haruki had come up with, smoothing over the rougher parts. "Hizashi-san will slip back outside the village perhaps 5 to 6 days after Haruki-kun is finished. If we time it correctly, no one will suspect anything." Hayashi mulled this over silently when Sarutobi finished, glancing briefly at his brother again as he had been every 2 minutes since Hizashi had shown himself. The other two occupants of the room politely pretended not to notice, though Hizashi made the effort to stare back reassuringly whenever Hayashi looked over. "It is a good plan," Hayashi admitted before glancing around the office. "Where is this spy now?" "I dismissed him for the day," Sarutobi revealed. "He deserves the rest." "What is his name?" Hayashi persisted. "Kazama Haruki," Hizashi provided helpfully. "A jounin." Hayashi frowned. "I have never heard of him." Sarutobi quickly took over again when Hizashi shot a subtle glance at him. "Haruki-kun hasn't been back in Konoha in 8 years, and before that, he was one of the newer jounins. All his reports to me have been through his summons. But he showed an aptitude for infiltration, so I sent him into Kumo on this long-term mission. I've personally erased his files so he wouldn't be traced back to Konoha if he were ever caught. As it is, he's done a wonderful job and even brought back an important figure of our village." Hayashi tilted his head thoughtfully, looking between his brother and the Hokage as if suspecting something, but Sarutobi kept his face bland and Hizashi blinked calmly back at his brother. The clan head accepted this knowledge with a simple nod after a moment, though Sarutobi had a hidden suspicion that Hayashi didn't entirely believe the story he had spun. "Very well," Hayashi continued without giving voice to any thoughts he had on the matter. "If you believe this to be the best course of action, I will accept this plan. I assume Hizashi will stay here in the meantime." Sarutobi nodded, mildly relieved. Hayashi was on the council and he might have been inclined to inform at least a few other members or decide that revenge against Kumo immediately would be the best course of action. As if sensing his thoughts, Hayashi elaborated after a contemplative moment, "You have said that this plan was suggested by Kazama-san. I will not accuse you of anything, Hokage-sama, but there is something not quite right about your description of this spy. I keep an eye on all shinobi above genin level and I have never heard of this man in my life. But it seems as if you feel he needs to be protected from the council, and while this plan gives Konoha an upper hand against Kumogakure, it also conveniently gives Kazama-san a concrete standing in Konoha. If this is so, I will abide by this plan." Sarutobi stared back at Hayashi impassively, a glimmer of well-hidden curiosity prompting him to question, "If this were true, you would not question Haruki-kun?" Hayashi arched an eyebrow. "Hokage-sama, you seem to place quite a lot of trust in this Kazama-san." He paused and Sarutobi inclined his head in agreement. "That would be my only concern. If you trust that he would not bring any harm to this village, then who am I to call out the man who has given me back my brother?" Sarutobi blinked, understanding flashing through him as he nodded thoughtfully. Hayashi now considered himself indebted to Haruki. He wondered what the redhead would think of that. Having a clan head and essentially an entire clan standing behind you could be a powerful weapon. "All right then," Sarutobi spoke briskly now, nodding to his side office. "If you wish, you could use my office to catch up on recent years." Both Hyugas bowed quietly, Hizashi quirking a wry smile at him before both brothers disappeared into the office, the door shutting behind them and their chakra signals disappearing instantly. Sarutobi deactivated the privacy seals but did not summon his ANBU back in as he settled down to work again. He decided to call Haruki back tomorrow. The situation wasn't so desperate that he would need to send the redhead back out when he had just come home. Naruto perked up when a knock sounded. He glanced at the plastic clock on the kitchen wall. Ha! His sensei was only half an hour late. He was sure this was some sort of record. Hi sensei. Naruto greeted as he opened his door. Kakashi I smiled at him but glanced distractedly next door and the blonde wanted to snicker. Why was his sensei so hung up on talking to Haruki? Haruki-san was taking a nap, Naruto announced as he stepped out of his apartment, closing the door behind him before making his way to his neighbor's apartment. But he told me to knock when you came over. Kakashi accepted this without a word, standing behind him in his usual slouch as Naruto knocked on the door. There was a moment of silence before muffled footsteps approached and the sound of a lock clicking open was heard and the door swung open. Immediately, Kakashi stiffened from his place behind his student as his eye met a pair of clear cerulean. The man had the red hair he had been looking out for and he had high cheekbones and a deceptively delicate facial structure that seemed distantly familiar to him, but it was the eyes that drew his attention in the end. A pair of blue eyes, a mix of sky and ocean that Kakashi had only ever seen on one other person. Sensei. Kakashi blinked and glanced down, breaking eye contact with the other jounin to stare inquiringly at his student even as his mind raced. Even Naruto's eyes weren't quite that shade though Kakashi supposed that could change when he grew up. Haruki had a shock of red hair that reached past his shoulders, but why was Kakashi's first impression of the man a jolting reminder of Namikaze Minato? Sensei, this is Kazama Haruki, Naruto introduced proudly, and Kakashi absently noted that the blonde had probably never had the opportunity to introduce anyone before. Haruki-san, this is Kakashi-sensei, the one I told you about. A slightly stilted silence descended on them as Naruto looked between the two in confusion. In contrast, Kakashi was caught up in that blue gaze again, but this time, now that the shock had died somewhat, he could see several differences between Haruki and his former sensei. Haruki had a more slender build. He was by no means feminine looking, but the redhead's muscles were subtly defined under his ninja uniform instead of the more solid build Minato had had. Kakashi thought the man should have been tanner as well since the current paleness of his skin didn't quite seem to suit him and leaned towards unhealthy, especially with the faint bags under Haruki's eyes that one could only see upon closer observation. The eye color was the only similarity to Minato that Kakashi could see at the moment, though now that he looked more closely into them, he could see the dark, haunted shadows lurking in them that not even his sensei had had after the war. Haruki was Kakashi's age. What had he seen that would leave darkness like that in his eyes? Who was this man? Hataki-san? The soft tenor snapped him out of his scrutiny and Kakashi instinctively sent an eye smile at the other jounin. Kazama-san, I'm Naruto-sensei, as I'm sure you've heard. I heard you were talking to my cute students and they seemed to take your word to heart, so I wanted to meet you. Haruki studied him for a moment, head tilting in a considering movement as he leaned against the doorframe. Are you angry? Kakashi blinked. Did he seem angry? He was honestly just curious about the redhead. He sighed inwardly. This was what he got for trying to be straightforward. He should just return to being himself. No doubt, it would tick the other man off in no time. With that thought, he whipped out his orange book, ignoring the groan from Naruto as he flipped it open without reservation. No, no, he assured cheerfully as he focused on his precious Ika. Just curious. A long silence followed and Kakashi could see Naruto facepalming over the top of his book. He could also feel Haruki's stare on him and he glanced up to make sure he hadn't scarred the man too much. Again, he was surprised and could only blink when he caught sight of the definitely fond smile playing on Haruki's lips, a touch of wistfulness now lingering in his eyes. It's nice to meet you, Haruki offered when he saw that he had Kakashi's full, if somewhat bewildered, attention again. The redhead glanced down at Naruto and reached out to ruffle his hair. I've boiled water for ramen. Would the two of you like to join me? Naruto brightened immediately and nodded enthusiastically. Haruki only smiled again and stepped aside to let the blonde in. He glanced questioningly at the Kappinin and Kakashi, after a moment of contemplation, nodded. He wasn't in the habit of accepting dinner invitations from near strangers, but there was something soothing about this man's aura that should have put him on alert but only served to relax him instead. Plus, he had wanted to find out more about this man and there really was no better time than the present. 3/4 of an hour later had both Haruki and Kakashi staring with slightly morbid fascination as Naruto downed his 17th bowl of instant ramen. Ah! I'm full. The blonde finally announced, sitting back as he set down the now empty bowl. Finally. You sure you don't want one more? Haruki and Kakashi glanced at each other, exchanging looks of wry amusement as Naruto pouted at them. In the span of 45 minutes, The two adults had fallen into a quiet sort of camaraderie, exchanging casual words now and then but comfortable when silence fell between them as they listened to Naruto babble about his training in between slurps of ramen. Kakashi didn't think he had ever taken to anyone so quickly, not even Minato, but the redhead didn't seem to mind his reading material when he brought it out for a while during the meal, nor did he seem at all offended when Kakashi pulled his "I was reading and I was definitely listening to you but I'm going to pretend I wasn't just to piss you off" routine after Haruki had questioned him on his reasons for being late all the time. Instead, Haruki had only nodded as if Kakashi had actually told the man that he didn't want to talk about it and had promptly done as he wished and changed the subject. But what confused Kakashi the most were the expressions on the redhead's face when Haruki thought the Kapinin wasn't looking. When he was supposedly immersed in his Ika, sometimes, out of the corner of his eye, he would see flashes of emotion cross the other Jounin's face. A wistful sort of affection several times, even a desperate kind of fear on occasion, and once, the one that alarmed the Kapinin more than any of the other expressions, a deep, grieving sorrow when Kakashi had commented offhandedly that he would rather go down fighting than spend any time in a hospital surrounded by nurses who didn't even have the decency to let him keep his reading material while he was there. It had been a joke really, after Naruto had wondered aloud whether or not it would bore him to death if he ever had to spend time in the hospital after a mission. Haruki had flinched minutely at this as if he had been struck, and Kakashi had found himself hastily steering the conversation away after that. "Haruki-san, Team 7 took a photo the other day," Naruto was now saying, already on his feet. "Do you want to see?" The faint half-smile that was already becoming familiar to Kakashi appeared on the redhead's face. "Sure. Why don't you go get it while I clear the table?" "K." The blonde scratched his head for a second before smiling sheepishly up at Haruki. "It might take a while. I haven't gotten a picture frame for it yet, so I put it somewhere in my room. Be back soon." With that said, the boy scampered out of the kitchen, his full stomach doing nothing to slow him down. As Haruki stood up to gather the empty plastic bowls of instant ramen, Kakashi rose as well and pulled over the garbage can before giving the man a hand. Haruki looked faintly surprised but nodded a silent thanks instead, and the two worked in silence until the table was cleared. "So what did you say to my students?" Kakashi asked when they moved into the sitting room. He noted the Jounin vest thrown over the back of the couch on one end and quickly took the other side of the couch, taking in the katana leaning against the wall in one corner of the room. Haruki shrugged, sitting down as well. "Nothing special. I told them to work together. That working as a team would make them stronger, and that being able to use your teammates' strengths and being able to cover for their weaknesses, as well as letting them do the same for you in return, is a testament to how strong you are." His eyes grew distant. "I told them that pride and arrogance had no place on a team if it got in the way of protecting your teammates. That those would just be weaknesses in the end." Kakashi stared at the redhead until Haruki actually turned to stare back. The Kapinin wondered idly if Haruki had Sasuke in mind when he had given that last piece of advice. "You'd make a good sensei," he finally said, not bothering to hide the respect in his voice at the obvious sincerity that had been in Haruki's words. He didn't expect the frown that appeared after he spoke. "I wouldn't," the redhead voiced with quiet certainty. He seemed about to say something else before suddenly closing his mouth again, eyes sharpening, and in the sudden silence, the two Jounins heard a faint crash of broken glass next door. Haruki was on his feet and at his door in a flash, Kakashi only a step behind him. Outside, Naruto's door was open and jeering voices could be heard. A sharp crack of skin on skin reached their ears. "Got some new things since we last visited, eh demon? Trash like you shouldn't waste space like this. It's too good for you. You don't deserve to get your murdering hands on such good merchandise." The man who had spoken bent down to pick up a plate off the ground that hadn't broken yet. He was just about to throw it when steel-like fingers curled around his wrist and, in one decisive twist, broke it without effort. The man screamed, plate slipping from his hand only to be neatly caught as the intruder spun around, clutching his arm and backing up to stand with the other two that had come with him. "You dash." The words died in his throat, air freezing in his lungs when he met an icy gaze, pinning all three men in place with cold efficiency. Behind Haruki, Kakashi quickly moved to the blonde crouching wide-eyed in a corner of the apartment, an ugly bruise already blossoming on one cheek. With his lips set in a thin line behind his mask, the Kapinin crouched down beside his student, doing a quick scan for any other injuries and breathing a small sigh of relief when he found none. Seeing Naruto's attention completely focused on his red-haired neighbor, Kakashi too turned back to Haruki, staring dispassionately at the three intruders cowering in front of the redhead. He couldn't quite bring himself to pity them. Haruki was currently exuding a frigid rage, tightly reined in, but curiously enough, his body was still relaxed. Moving Naruto to the side, Kakashi just managed to catch a glimpse of the redhead's face and had to suppress a shudder. While Haruki's visage remained deadly still, it was the eyes that seemed to bring the most fear to the men in front of him. Unforgiving and ruthless, the usual cerulean had darkened to a near twilight blue, almost demonic in its nature. "Get out!" The order, for it could be mistaken for nothing else, had not been shouted, nor had Haruki snarled at them. In that even, calm tone Kakashi had grown used to earlier that evening, the only difference being the impassive steel that now edged his voice, Haruki had the men scrambling for the door, giving the redhead a wide berth. "If you or any of your friends ever come back," Haruki's voice, still soft, froze the men in their tracks again as they reached the door. Bottomless Indigo turned to stare at them. "I will hunt you down and you will only live long enough to regret every action you ever took against this boy." Haruki held their gazes for a moment longer, letting the promise sink in. And then the redhead blinked and the spell broke, and the men were gone a fraction of a second later, fleeing the apartment building as if the devil itself was at their heels. It might as well have been, Kakashi thought with satisfied amusement, visible eye studying the figure still facing away from them before glancing down at Naruto. The blonde was staring open-mouthed at the redhead, and Kakashi suspected that there might even be stars in the boy's awestruck eyes at the moment. "Naruto!" Haruki suddenly barked and the blonde jumped from his spot. "Why, do you know what Fuinjutsu is?" This question was so completely off-topic that even Kakashi blinked in confusion for a moment. Naruto scratched his head. No. Doesn't matter," Haruki snapped, finally turning around. The ice had melted from the man's eyes, leaving only a protective ferocity behind. "You'll learn one day. For now, I'll maintain the seals on this place." With that said, the redhead stalked out of the apartment, leaving both Naruto and Kakashi to scramble after him. "You know Fuinjutsu?" Kakashi eyed the redhead with new interest as he leaned against Naruto's counter, studying the intricate symbols Haruki was currently writing out with a skilled, steady hand. On Haruki's other side, legs swinging in the air, Naruto was perched on the counter, peering at the redhead's work. The bruise on his face was already fading and Kakashi knew it would be gone by morning. Haruki replied without looking up. "I picked it up over the years." It was obvious to Kakashi that Haruki did not want to speak further on the subject, so he dropped it without another word. "Perhaps another time. If you know Fuinjutsu," Naruto chimed in. "How come you can't teach me?" Earlier, after the intruders had fled, Haruki had given the blonde a simplified run-through of what Fuinjutsu was and what the protection seals he was currently making would do. "I could make ones that could set those bastards on fire," Haruki had explained nonchalantly as he glanced at Kakashi, "but your sensei over there is duty-bound to protect the citizens of Konoha, so he would have to report me." Kakashi had refrained from asking why Haruki wasn't duty-bound to protect the citizens of Konoha and report himself, and could talk so easily of setting them on fire. The small demonic light in the redhead's eyes when Haruki had mentioned said citizens, as fiercely protective as a mother over her child, had convinced him that Haruki wouldn't care. Frankly speaking, Kakashi wouldn't care either, but he didn't feel like getting a dressing down from the sandaime, so he had kept quiet. He figured if they ever managed to get to Naruto again, seals would be the least of their problems when he and Haruki got through with them. Naruto had readily agreed to the seals and had been asking questions non-stop since Haruki had started. Haruki paused briefly at the question, brush hovering above the piece of paper for a second before continuing. "There are better teachers out there. And I'm not teacher material." Naruto pouted. "You gave Sasuke, Sakura-chan, and me dash." "And I," Haruki corrected automatically as Kakashi watched on. "And I," Naruto repeated obediently. A lesson before Kakashi-sensei arrived that day. And they both listened. "And we've been doing really good on our missions because of your advice. Right, sensei?" Kakashi nodded with no small amount of amusement when Haruki reached out and flicked the blonde on the forehead, straightening from the seal as he put down his brush. "Doing really well on our missions, duckling," the redhead corrected gently. "And like you said, all I did was give you advice. I didn't teach you anything." Naruto only pouted some more, but couldn't stay annoyed when Haruki picked up the small stack of now finished seals. "What now?" the blonde asked inquisitively, jumping down from the counter. Kakashi followed them, hands stuffed into his pockets. It had been a long time since he had seen a Fuinjutsu user at work. Now we just place them around the apartment. The door, of course. They stepped outside and Haruki slapped one on either side of the door, discharging a small amount of his chakra into each of them. The symbols on the paper flashed an electric blue before dissipating from the paper. For a moment, once the paper was removed, the same symbols could be seen on the actual wall of the apartment. They shone brightly in the night before they too disappeared, but Kakashi, extending a tentative hand forward to touch the ordinary-looking wood, could feel the steady hum of power under his fingers. He turned back to Haruki, keeping quiet since he was sure he wouldn't be able to keep the amazement out of his voice if he spoke. Most Fuinjutsu users stuck seals, paper and all, to a surface and the chakra placed into it would keep it activated and in place. Kakashi knew of only 2 other people who could transfer seals directly from paper to the actual object with so little effort, the Yondaime and the Toad Sannin Jiraiya. Did this mean that Haruki was as good as either of them? The way the redhead had spoken about it earlier, Kakashi had thought that Haruki only knew enough to get by. Anyone wanting to do harm will be thrown back before they can get within 10 feet of this doorway, Haruki announced, sounding satisfied. If they don't get a clue the first time and try again, they'll get electrocuted and then thrown back. If they still don't get it, they'll die? Kakashi cut in dryly, arching an eyebrow at the redhead as he listened with growing amusement. Haruki looked highly unimpressed. Fortunately for them, no. I put a transportation component into the seal. They'll be dumped in the Naka River if they try a third time. Kakashi was very grateful for his mask at the moment since he couldn't help the grin that surfaced on his features. As it was, the laughter that no doubt showed on the visible part of his face caught Haruki's attention instead and the redhead smirked in response. Shaking his head, the Kapinin pointed out, won't they need to go to the hospital once they get electrocuted? Haruki waved a hand as he headed back inside. When I say electrocuted, I mean that's how I like to imagine it in my head. In reality, they'll only get a nasty shock and, if they're smart, go home with mild burns. Otherwise, they'll risk pneumonia. Naka River's still cold this time of the year, and if they try again after that, Haruki stopped, glancing briefly down at Naruto who blinked curiously back up at him before focusing on the Kapinin now leaning lazily against the doorframe. I don't think they will. Kakashi smiled knowingly at Haruki. He had spent almost 2 hours now in the redhead's presence and knew, if nothing else, that Haruki was a very careful man. Careful people were dangerous people since they were prepared for almost anything. They had contingency plans for contingency plans. Haruki glanced sharply at the Kapinin before continuing in a steely voice, there is also a gravity component in the seal. It will hold them to the ground until I release them, and by that time, I will know, and I will come and deal with them myself. Kakashi cocked his head, studying the redhead carefully as the man turned to face the nearest window. He had not yet seen Haruki fight, but he imagined it would be both amazing and terrifying. The unyielding resolve in Haruki's voice rang true, and from experience, Kakashi knew men like that were dangerous to face on a good day. They were downright suicidal to go up against on a bad day. His former sensei had been like that, and Kakashi had seen enemy literally flee for their lives at the first sight of an enraged Yondaime. Hell, they had run when Minato hadn't been angry. Watching Haruki now though, with the redhead listening attentively to Naruto as his student babbled on excitedly about the first time they had chased Tora around Konoha, actually listening when others would have nodded disinterestedly and tuned the boy out, Kakashi could only wonder why. Naruto had said that he had only met Haruki when the Jounin had returned from his mission 5 days ago, and only briefly. Yet, even in the short time Kakashi had interacted with him, Haruki had shown himself to be unnaturally protective of Naruto, threatening intruders and setting up seals for the boy as if it was his responsibility to do so. Hataki-san, Naruto wants to try his hand at activating a seal. His sensei should get his mind out of the gutter and come over and watch. Kakashi blinked and opened his mouth to protest the accusation when he noted the teasing glint in the other Jounin's eyes. He closed his mouth again and scoffed quietly, whipping out his book in retribution instead. As Kakashi now expected but still didn't understand, Haruki only smiled fondly at him without a single trace of annoyance marring the expression. Inwardly sighing, the Kapinin slipped his book away again and tried not to sulk. It was no fun if the other party didn't get mad, though he couldn't quite muster up any real annoyance towards Haruki for this either. "Ma, call me Kakashi." Kakashi drew closer, glancing down at the seal now placed on the coffee table. "Hataki-san makes me feel old." "You are old, sensei." His student retorted, and Kakashi frowned down at Naruto, about to remind the blonde that Haruki was the same age before glancing back sharply at Haruki again when the redhead chuckled. There was nothing special about the action itself. Naruto had given a witty reply and anyone with a sense of humor would have laughed. It was the sound though. Because for one short, painful, pitiful moment, Kakashi could have sworn it had been Minato standing there, chuckling at something Obito had said. Kakashi stared for a moment too long though, and he immediately regretted it when Haruki seemed to realize something had disturbed him. The humor died from his face and his eyes grew wary again. Kakashi hadn't even noticed that the shadows that he had first observed in Haruki's cerulean eyes had lifted sometime during their dinner until now, when they settled back in place like they had never left. Kakashi felt like kicking himself, but Haruki spoke again as if nothing had occurred and his voice was still mild when he replied, "You can call me Haruki then, if you want." Kakashi nodded hesitantly, and then had no more time to think when Naruto, already impatient to begin with, reached out with one hand touched the seal. Before any of them had a chance to react, the seal literally started to smoke before a flash of chakra nearly blinded them and the paper seal promptly disintegrated, along with the part of the table that it had been lying on top of. All three were silent as they stared at the pile of ash and blackened wood on the ground. Was that supposed to happen? Kakashi asked mildly, finally breaking the silence as he glanced sidelong at the other jounin. Haruki's face remained impassive for all of 2 seconds before his lips twitched upwards and amusement entered his features again. Kakashi smiled triumphantly. A smile was better than nothing, especially since he had been responsible for ridding the earlier humor in the first place. As if realizing he wasn't in trouble for damaging the coffee table or getting it wrong, Naruto's face split into an embarrassed grin, rubbing the back of his head. "Sorry, Haruki-san." Haruki shrugged. "It happens. That was a seal for creating sparks for a campfire. You just put too much chakra into it." Almost as an afterthought, he added, glancing in Kakashi's direction, "You could start your team on chakra control exercises. It would help all of them in the long run the sooner they get started on it." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. "I'll get them started tomorrow. Sasuke could do with some training of that sort too, but I think chakra control comes easily to Sakura." Naruto had brightened with the thought of new training and Kakashi was distracted by the hyperactive blonde now trying to wrangle what the exercise would be out of him, so much that he almost missed the look of grim satisfaction that flashed across Haruki's face. Almost, but not quite. Kakashi said nothing though, and filed this new information away into a corner of his mind that he had set aside for all the things that didn't make much sense about Kazama Haruki. He would think on it later. The rest of the evening was spent placing up the seals. When they were finished, Haruki had taken one look at the clock and ordered the blonde to shower and get to bed. Kakashi had snickered quietly on the side when he realized what a mother Haruki could be. The redhead only shot him a dirty look before bidding the blonde goodnight. Now, standing in front of Haruki's apartment door, both with their hands tucked away in pockets, Kakashi glanced at the quiet redhead and decided to try for one more round of questions and answers. He glanced behind him at Haruki's door. "Does your apartment have seals too?" An almost evil grin appeared on the redhead's face for a moment. "Of course, but nowhere near as harmless as the ones I put on Naruto's place. If you had come to my door with the intention to do me serious harm, the seals would have electrocuted you 6 ways to Sunday. And yes, this time, when I say electrocuted, I mean electrocuted." Kakashi tried not to look too disturbed as he edged away from the seemingly innocent-looking doorway. They fell into a companionable silence again and Kakashi wondered if Haruki knew he wanted to ask the redhead questions and that was the reason he wasn't being ordered to go home just yet. Deciding to simply speak his mind, he thought back to Naruto and decided to start with his student. "Not that I think it's a bad thing, but why are you helping Naruto so much?" Haruki tilted his head just enough to observe him out of the corner of his eyes. "Why shouldn't I? He's 12, he lives alone, and his place gets broken into every other week. What kind of person would I be if I didn't help him?" Kakashi said nothing, wondering if his student's place really did get broken into every other week, and if so, how Haruki would know about it. "You broke someone's wrist," Kakashi reminded dryly. "That's a lot of anger for someone as calm as you are." Haruki snorted. "You wouldn't believe the temper I had when I was young." "Young, not younger," Kakashi noted. "I used to get annoyed at everything, though I calmed down pretty quickly too. Probably because of my short attention span. Not anymore though." "No," Haruki agreed, and something weary and strained entered his expression as he turned his gaze onto the night sky. "Not anymore. I used up most of my anger a long time ago." Kakashi frowned but let the matter go. Haruki would probably clam up if he pushed it any further. You didn't report me for breaking a civilian's wrist. Haruki was staring at him out of the corner of his eyes again. Kakashi snorted. Even if I wanted to report you, do you really think the Sandaime is going to do anything about it? He can't watch Naruto all the time but he treats him like his own grandson. He'd be furious with the civilians. Haruki nodded in agreement. True enough. Kakashi contemplated his next thought for a moment before asking, do you want to join our training session tomorrow? Naruto would be happy and I'm sure Sasuke and Sakura would be happy to see you too. Haruki cast a dubious look at him. Sasuke? Really? Well, maybe not happy, Kakashi amended. Interested. Not grumpy. Could definitely care less. You can pick. Haruki's mouth tilted up in another small smile but shot him a suspicious look this time. I hope you're not trying to pawn your students off on me, Hitaki. I already told you I'm not teacher material. Kakashi attempted a mildly offended countenance. I would never try to pawn my cute little students off on anyone. The humor in his eye faded somewhat. But I don't agree that you wouldn't be a good teacher. Haruki arched an eyebrow at him. You've never seen me teach. Kakashi stared pointedly at him. Not an hour ago, you just explained basic Fuinjutsu theory in a simple but clear enough way that even Naruto understood it. A sharp glance was thrown his way. Naruto will become great at Fuinjutsu. The absolute certainty in Haruki's voice threw Kakashi a little, but he managed to reply lightly, careful not to let his tone be mistaken for mockery. Got all that after he put a hole through his own coffee table, huh? As he hoped, a slight smile appeared on the redhead's face again and the tension that had gripped the man's shoulders released its hold. They'll think about it, Haruki finally allowed. I think the Hokage will want me to report to him in the morning to discuss my recent mission. I've been resting long enough. But he'll see if I can come by sometime afterwards. Kakashi nodded but couldn't quite help asking one last thing. You haven't really been in Konoha for the past week, have you? He got an impassive stare for his troubles but didn't stop pushing. His ego was on the line here, damn it. I'm a tracker. My dogs are trackers. We're the best. But I couldn't find you, which means that you weren't here. Right? Another heartbeat of silence and then soft clear laughter rang out in the night air, brilliant in its genuineness. On the outside, Kakashi was stunned as he watched the face in front of him come truly alive for the first time since he had met this man. On the inside, he was downright thunderstruck. If he had any doubts before, they were all gone now. This Kazama Haruki, whoever he was, had Minato's laugh. The copynin couldn't quite help the smile that curved his lips as his posture relaxed again. He didn't care what anyone said, Haruki was not a jounin sent to Kyumo as a spy 8 years ago. He didn't know the real story and he definitely planned to find out, but even with all the secrets Haruki coveted, Kakashi also knew he could trust this man. There was no way the redhead could be an enemy nin, not if he could laugh like that in the presence of someone he had known for all of 2 hours. And yeah, it hurt a little to hear Minato's laugh come from this strange shinobi, but that feeling was dying even as he thought this. Instead, he found himself wondering what had happened to Haruki for the redhead to lock away this laughter, this happiness, what had happened to hide this man away so that Kakashi was only now getting a glimpse of what Haruki might have been or could have been, and what it would take to draw this man out again, and to keep him here instead of hidden away behind the distant, melancholic, weary soldier that Kakashi had first met. But for now, this was enough, and as Haruki's laughter died away, fading to a contented smile instead, Kakashi only smiled back lightly. So does that mean you weren't in Konoha? Haruki grinned and headed into his apartment. Good night, Kakashi. I'll see you around. Kakashi raised a lazy hand. Night then. Come by training ground 7 if can. A nod and then the redhead disappeared, door closing quietly behind him. Kakashi remained motionless for a while longer before heading towards his own home, his steps lighter than usual, even for a shinobi. That had been an interesting evening. He could honestly say he had not had so much fun in a very long time. He absently wondered if Haruki would ask him over for dinner again. Maybe he could bring Sasuke and Sakura too. That would be all of Team 7. As he continued to muse over the things he had learned that night and made plans for tomorrow's training, Kakashi didn't notice that his mind had already unconsciously placed Haruki with their team. Chapter 4, People Take Notice. But only Hayashi-san knows. This question was directed at both Sarutobi and Hizashi as Haruki glanced between them, arms crossed. He had been summoned by the Hokage at 6 in the morning and had spent the past 15 minutes being filled in by Sarutobi about yesterday's conversation after he had left. Sarutobi nodded. He has agreed to the plan. We will execute this before telling the council. Haruki nodded and then glanced over his shoulder when a muffled knock sounded. Is that him? I asked him to come. We will need to finalize the plan. Sarutobi raised his voice. Come in. The door opened and Hayashi stepped in. Immediately, Byakugan eyes clashed with cerulean as the clan head studied Haruki with careful intensity. Haruki only stared back impassively, rising slowly to his feet before dipping his head in a sign of respect. Not a full bow though. He didn't care what time he was in, he didn't bow to anyone anymore. Hayashi closed the door behind him and the privacy seals settled again. He nodded a greeting at his brother and bowed slightly to the Hokage, but his gaze was ultimately drawn back to the red-haired jounin standing in the room as he listened to Sarutobi's introduction of this man as Kazama Haruki, the spy that had brought his brother back. There was a puzzling weariness to this man's stance and Hayashi's eyes lingered on the color of his irises. A distant memory tugged on him but he couldn't quite place it. A mild frown made its way onto his face. Those eyes reminded him of someone but it was just out of reach when his mind tried to grasp it. He dismissed the thought, leaving it for another time and studied the rest of the jounin instead. There was no doubt about it. He had never seen this Kazama Haruki before. There was no way he could have forgotten such bright hair on a jounin or even a chunin. Hayashi recalled the respectful nod he had received upon his arrival. A nod, not a bow. This man was proud in the quiet sort of way Hayashi approved of most. And instead of looking down while in a clan head's presence, Haruki stared right back, not challenging him, only acknowledging him. So Hayashi returned it. He nodded back, returning the jounin's strong gaze with an equal one of his own. I believe I have you to thank for the safe return of my brother, Kazama-san. I and the Hyuga clan will be forever thankful for what you have done. Haruki blinked once, tilting his head to one side as he tried to adjust to this Hyuga Hayashi. The one in his time, the Hayashi he had gotten used to, had dropped most of this formality, and while his words had still been spoken with all the polite upbringing of nobility, that Hayashi had also been blunter. Haruki could get away with a simple "you're welcome" to Hayashi's straightforward "thank you" and vice versa. Well, he had never learned how to talk like a noble. He wasn't about to start now. You're welcome, Hayashi-san, sama. Haruki replied plainly, ignoring the inquiring quirk of one of the noble's eyebrows when Hayashi caught his slip. I was happy to help. Hayashi stared at him for a moment longer before the Hokage coughed quietly, drawing their attention back to Sarutobi. The Hokage said nothing, keeping his expression neutral, but Hizashi's features were edged with faint amusement as their somewhat stilted exchange came to a halt. Now then, Sarutobi said briskly, turning to Haruki first. Your plan is good, but there are a few holes in it. Hayashi-san mentioned earlier, the council will want to know why we did not immediately inform them when you came home with Hizashi-san. Hayashi-san has come up with a solution. Hayashi took his cue and explained, Hizashi is part of the Hyuga clan, and thus he can be considered clan business. Hokage-sama's first action after you relayed the information to him a week ago would be to inform me. As the Hyuga clan head, I can choose to withhold this information from all outsiders and deal with the issue in accordance to my own wishes as long as it will not jeopardize the village. The other clan heads will accept this explanation without question and the rest of the council knows not to interfere with clan affairs. Haruki stared hard at Hayashi before pointing out flatly, you'll be lying to the council. Hayashi didn't so much as blink. Yes. Haruki observed the calm resolve Hayashi's eyes before shrugging. Sounds good to me. But, he turned to take in all three of the room's other occupants as he continued. Danzo won't fall for it. He may not challenge it right away, but you can be sure he'll be getting some of his root to look into it. Immediate silence descended on the room as Hizashi straightened in his chair and Hayashi turned to look sharply at him. Sarutobi simply stared. Root? Haruki frowned at the sudden tension in the air before realization flooded him. Eyes widening, he blurted out, old man, you cannot be serious. Both Hyugas looked a little startled at his outburst but Sarutobi only shook his head. I know Danzo is still in command of a few nin whom are loyal to him but what you are implying. Haruki almost glowered as he looked between the three occupants. He finally opted to close his eyes for a moment. I honestly don't even know where to start. He muttered darkly. Opening his eyes again, he caught the two Hyugas exchanging an unreadable look before turning back to him. Haruki-san, Hizashi started quietly. Whatever information you can reveal to us here, you have the word of both myself and Nisan that we will not question your information source, nor will anything of what is spoken here today leave this room through either of us. Haruki eyed them doubtfully for a moment. You realize you are placing a lot of trust in someone neither of you actually know. I could be an enemy Nin, for all you know. I do not believe that, Hizashi immediately denied. Haruki scowled at him. Of course you don't. Hayashi inclined his head. My brother has informed me that he has good reason to trust you. I believe him. Haruki sighed and glanced at Sarutobi. The Hokage shrugged and nodded at him. It is your choice, Haruki-kun. The redhead frowned at him before staring past him out the window. After a long moment of consideration, he started slowly without looking at any of them. Danzo doesn't just have a few Nin loyal to him. He has an entire army. Haruki ignored the uneasy quiet behind him. Root was disbanded under the Yondaime but Danzo kept it together in secret. It isn't as big as the ANBU troops but they're well-trained soldiers. Weapons. Danzo made sure to lock their emotions away. They have a cursed seal on their tongue which will paralyze them if they try to speak about Danzo, so you can't interrogate them. Haruki finally turned back to the others, observing the faint shock on each man's face. True to their word, neither Hyuga asked how he had gotten this information, exchanging a few words and frowns between them instead as Sarutobi leaned back in his chair and digested this. Do you know where Root is hidden? Hayashi spoke up. Haruki considered this for a moment. He knew where the future location would be, but he hadn't even known about Root in his timeline at this age and Danzo was damn paranoid on a good day. There was no way their base would still be in the same place. No, not right now. He finally settled on a compromise, and saw a flash of understanding cross both Sarutobi and Hizashi's face. Again, Hayashi glanced at his brother and said nothing more on the subject. It does not matter, Sarutobi cut in. You don't have any personal files. I will tell them that I had them destroyed before you left for Kyumo. Danzo will make inquiries. Haruki pointed out. There aren't. His gaze flickered to Hayashi. There aren't many people who know me anymore. Sarutobi rested his chin on clasped hands as he stared thoughtfully at the redhead. I believe your old team was killed on a mission. He said eventually. Several of the other shinobi of your generation died as well. I don't believe you ever interacted with the other jounin of your age currently in the village before I sent you out on the infiltration. Haruki didn't even bother glancing at Hayashi this time. That's flimsy, old man. That would never hold against Danzo. Does that matter? Sarutobi asked pointedly. You kept to yourself and have been gone from this village since you were 18. Who can dispute anything? The only thing the other jounin around your age will say is that they do not remember you. There are shinobi from my days that I do not remember. Haruki threw up his hands in exasperation, forgetting himself for a moment. Yes, old man, but unlike you, I can't claim senility. A muffled cough made Haruki turn and he just managed to catch Hizashi hide a smile behind his hand. Beside him, Hayashi's face was determinately neutral, white eyes blank as he stared ahead. Haruki turned back to the Hokage, only to be faced with an annoyed glare. Blinking, Haruki just shrugged unrepentantly. Sarutobi sighed, shaking his head. It is the best we have. Should worst come to worst, we will handle Danzo then. For now, it is enough to put him off. Besides, he will be more interested in Hizashi-san's return than anything else. Haruki nodded reluctantly. Danzo would become a major problem eventually, and from experience, Haruki knew he would be a huge pain in the ass. Moving on then, Sarutobi inquired. Are there anyone else in the council you believe will prove a problem? Haruki paused to consider this before shrugging. Well, you can pretty much expect Shikako-san to not believe a single word, but I don't think he'll say anything. Sarutobi frowned thoughtfully but nodded for the redhead to continue. Inoichi-san and Choza-san won't kick up a fuss about it even if they suspect something. Those two other council members, Koharu and Hamura, they probably won't suspect anything until Danzo updates them and then they'll back him completely. Again, Sarutobi nodded. He hadn't expected anything else from those two. And the civilian representative is in Danzo's pocket, so he'll go with whatever Danzo wants. Finished, Haruki fell silent to observe the others. Hayashi and Hizashi were talking between themselves again, having frowned when Haruki had mentioned the civilian representative. Sarutobi was taking this in much more easily though, waiting patiently for the Hyugas to finish their exchange. I will keep this information in mind, Sarutobi finally spoke again. For now, we need to finalize our plan and execute it before too much time passes. Haruki-kun, I want you to leave tomorrow morning. How soon can you get to Kyomo and destroy the shrine? A day and a half. Hayashi's eyebrows shot up in surprise but made no comment. Alright, 3 days is the average time a nin can get from Kyomo to Konoha. Factoring in rest time for Hizashi-san, we will stage his return 4 days after the explosion. For those 4 days, I will pretend to send you out on a simple information-gathering mission to Kaze no Kuni. Haruki nodded. On my way back, I can henge into Hizashi-san and let a few people glimpse me. Rumors would start up that way. Sarutobi nodded in approval but Hizashi leaned forward with a sudden thought. One last thing, wouldn't I be quite a bit weaker once I break the seal? How exactly would I manage to blow up a shrine? Haruki shook his head. When seals are deactivated properly like they should be, there would be no damage to anyone or anything around it. But when a seal is broken by force because it has become weak or someone managed to overpower it, it can cause quite a bit of damage. He paused and noticed he now had a captive audience. Take the life suspension seal for example. Most human beings, even if they are on the verge of death, all struggle to survive for even just 1 more minute. That is every average human's most basic instinct, to survive, to live. Even under a life suspension seal, the body is slowly dying. Much more slowly of course, but still dying. If that seal slips, the body will automatically start struggling against it. It's instinct. As the body struggles, because the seal is still keeping most of the bodhi's functions alive but blocked off, chakra will begin to build up. The seal is like a dam, the chakra build up like a raging river. Water is patient, water can wait. Chakra is the same. Eventually, the dam will burst if not fixed and like that dam, the seal would also break. After that, I think you can imagine what would happen. There was blatant interest in both Hyuga's faces and, almost like a student at the academy, Hizashi promptly answered, the chakra would explode outwards. And a buildup of chakra like that could destroy a small area. Haruki nodded. Exactly. All I'll have to do is release a burst of chakra strong enough to take out the shrine. Easy enough. It was Hayashi who spoke this time, his question directed at the Hokage even as his eyes remained on Haruki. Hokage-sama, yesterday, I believe you informed me that Kazama-san is adept at Fuinjutsu. His stare grew thoughtful. You do not explain Fuinjutsu theory like someone only adept at the art, Kazama-san. Haruki frowned. That was the simplified version. I mean, I can recite scrolls to you. Rai, the one who taught me gave me the scrolls. Hizashi shook his head. That is the point. Most novices and even some experts can only recite theory word for word. They are proficient enough at the practical aspect, but if they try to teach others, they simply give them scrolls to learn from. You can talk about it as if you were teaching a class. Haruki stiffened a little, glancing between the two Hyugas. That's how I learn. He finally said. I've never been good with academics. I graduated from the academy at the bottom of my class. And I used to have a very short attention span. When I am handed large sections of text to read, I lose all interest. But I wanted to learn Fuinjutsu so I compromised. As long as I understood it and I could explain it clearly to someone else, my sensei told me I wouldn't have to memorize it. Eventually, I did memorize all the scrolls but that took years longer for me. Hayashi nodded thoughtfully but it was Hizashi who spoke. Have you ever considered teaching Fuinjutsu? This was obviously the wrong to say and Haruki's face blanked. No. The two brothers glanced at each other before nodding simultaneously, saying nothing more as they turned back to the Hokage. Sarutobi glanced sidelong at the redhead with something like concern but didn't either. Very well then. We're done here. And I'm running late. I should be handing out missions right now. I'll come with you. Haruki reached into a pocket and withdrew a hair tie, quickly sweeping his hair into a simple ponytail, leaving jaw-length bangs to frame his face. Both Hyugas immediately frowned, another memory tugging at them but staying just out of reach. Before either could say anything, Sarutobi voiced curiously, eyeing the flak jacket he had given the jounin earlier that week as well as the dark long-sleeved shirt underneath, matching trousers, and calf-length sandals. Will you be training today, Haruki-kun? Haruki nodded curtly. Kakashi wants me to join his team for the day. Ah, he caught up to you then. Sarutobi chuckled, rising from his seat. Minutes later, Hayashi was heading back to the Hyuga compound. Hizashi had retreated into the Hokage's private office, and Sarutobi and Haruki were both heading to the mission assignment room. This is a good opportunity to let the other jounin see you, Sarutobi remarked as they drew closer to their destination. I believe you would know Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy. Haruki nodded distractedly, steeling himself for another meeting with people he had seen die. He glanced at the Hokage walking beside him and, recalling some of the things Asuma had mentioned in passing to him and Shika before his death, suggested quietly, you should make up with Asuma. He may seem indifferent to the rift between you two, but he does care. He just doesn't understand you, and he doesn't know how to try. Sarutobi actually faltered a step as Haruki spoke but recovered quickly enough that Haruki could pretend it hadn't happened. The Hokage was silent until they reached the mission room. At the door, Sarutobi laid a gentle hand on Haruki's arm. The redhead paused, turning to look questioningly at the older man. Sarutobi only smiled. Thank you. I will try. Haruki cleared his throat uncomfortably, nodding jerkily before opening the side door and motioning for the Hokage to enter first. Inside, Haruki immediately caught sight of the familiar senseis of Team 8, 10, Guy, and, shockingly, 7. They all glanced up and straightened when the Hokage walked in, their gazes immediately drawn to the redhead walking a step behind Sarutobi. Haruki? All eyes turned to Kakashi next. The copynin had actually taken the time to look up from his book and his visible eye was watching the redhead curiously. Haruki smiled a greeting. By your standards, you're early today, Kakashi. Kakashi shrugged, stowing his book away and moving forward, ignoring the odd looks he was receiving from the other senseis. I was over half an hour late. You and Hokage-sama are even later. Haruki shrugged without concern before glancing at Sarutobi who was watching the entire exchange with far too much amusement. Or rather, he was watching the other senseis' confused expressions as they watched the exchange with far too much amusement. Kakashi never acted this way with anyone. Sarutobi idly wondered what had happened yesterday for the two to seem completely at ease in each other's company. Then again, Haruki was Naruto and he had always thought Naruto could get to anyone if he tried hard enough. The Hokage quickly handed out the day's missions, painting a fence, mowing a field, weeding, and patrol duty for Team Guy, before he nodded a goodbye to Haruki. After this, he wouldn't see Haruki again for several days. As they left the mission room, Haruki walking beside Kakashi to peer down at the mission scroll Kakashi had in hand, the other three senseis immediately drifted closer, all of them eyeing Haruki curiously. Who's your friend, Kakashi? Kurenai was the first to speak, features friendly as she faced Haruki. Kakashi glanced at them before patting the redhead on the shoulder. Ma, this is who I was looking for earlier. Kazama Haruki, you're the one that had Konoha's famous copynin running around on a wild goose chase. Asuma peered at Haruki with interest. Haruki offered a small smile and nodded as Kakashi's eye twitched. Yes. I guess Kakashi just kept missing me all week. Here, the copynin muttered something that sounded insistently like you weren't here. I just came back 5 days ago from a pretty long mission. As Asuma nodded thoughtfully, Guy bounded up, already beaming. Haruki-san. To best my rival in his area of expertise, your springtime of youth must shine brightly in you. Kakashi had whipped out his book the moment Guy had opened his mouth while Kurenai was already facepalming as Asuma sighed on her left. Give it a rest, Guy. Kurenai chided. You're going to scare him off. At least introduce yourself first. Without waiting for the spandex-clad jounin to respond, Kurenai turned to Haruki and offered a welcoming smile. Hi, I'm Yuhi Kurenai, sensei of Team 8. Turning to gesture at Asuma, who nodded cordially, she continued, this is Sarutobi Asuma, sensei of Team 10. Before she could say anything more, Guy leapt in, and I'm Mato Guy. Everyone calls me Konoha's sublime green beast of prey. Haruki chuckled, much to the consternation of the other three jounin, and Kakashi quickly cut in, Guy, no one calls you that. You only introduce yourself to other people like that in the hopes of scarring them for life. Guy just flashed a white-teethed grin. My eternal rival. There is no reason to be jealous simply because you do not have a name as cool as mine. In this time of spring, all shinobi are in the springtime of their youths and thus will discover their own names for themselves. Kakashi had already gone back to his book and now glanced up from it, visible-eyed disinterested. Ha! Did you say something? Guy took on an affronted countenance, and watching them, Haruki couldn't help but smile wistfully at the banter. Kakashi had died before Guy, and the optimistic Jounin had never been the same after that. No matter how much Guy ranted at Kakashi and Kakashi pretended to ignore him, the two had been good friends. Oh! That was so hip of you, Kakashi. But you should listen to me. He turned to Haruki, eager to prove his point. Spring is the best season for one to blossom into true beauty. I prefer autumn myself. Guy looked appalled at this even as the other three looked on, dubious expressions on their faces as Haruki continued the conversation. How could you? Spring is the stage of life where every ninja starts to grow their roots. We can show our springtime of youth to the world as we begin to flourish. Haruki nodded, absently turning his gaze to a nearby window to catch sight of the clear morning spring sky as his voice turned regretful. Yeah, but once we reach autumn, we've led a successful enough life that we've managed to see half of it. An abrupt silence fell around them and Haruki turned back to see all four Jounin staring at him in surprise. The redhead shifted minutely as he realized that no one really understood Guy's diatribes, at least not before the first several dozen times. It had taken himself a few years to pick up the subtle insinuations behind the blaring words. As it was, Guy was now staring at him almost thoughtfully, a rare somber expression shaping his features. Haruki hated it. That expression had become far too common during the last years of the war. As it was though, Haruki was careful to keep his face blank. Guy was much more observant than most people gave him credit for. A second later though, the spandex-clad Jounin had reached out and clapped him on the shoulder, grin splitting his face again. Woasich. I've decided. Your springtime of youth is indeed exceptional. I would like you to meet my team. They will be delighted to meet such youth. Honestly, Haruki couldn't imagine Niji delighted to meet anyone, especially at this age, and he quickly turned the offer down as he motioned to Kakashi. Sorry Guy-san, but Kakashi's already invited me to train with his team. Perhaps another day. Guy immediately rounded on Kakashi, pointing accusingly at him even as Kakashi heaved a deep suffering sigh. My eternal rival works swiftly when the result is worth it. Very well. You win this round, but... He rounded on Haruki again. Tomorrow, you will train with us, Haruki-san. I insist. Haruki paused briefly, considering the option of leaving Akage Bunshin behind but dismissed the idea. Sarutobi had already given him a reason to be out of the village and it wouldn't be fair to Guy's team. I'm afraid I am busy tomorrow. Hokage-sama is sending me out on a mission. Kakashi glanced at him. So soon? He asked casually. Haruki hid a smirk. It has been 5 days. Kakashi scowled. He didn't believe the redhead had been in the village since the beginning of the week. It just wasn't possible. Guy looked disappointed but perked up again when Haruki continued, I'll join your team for a training session as soon as I'm free once I get back. Is that alright? The Jounin flashed another blinding grin at him. Of course. I will hold you to your word, Haruki-san. His eyes flickered to the window as well before waving his mission scroll in the air. Now, I must be off. It is not very youthful for the sensei to be late. He shot a pointed look at Kakashi, who expertly ignored it, before jogging away, waving a hand in the air. They all watched him go before Kurenai turned back to Haruki. You actually held a conversation with Guy when he's like that. I wish I had your patience. Haruki smiled lightly. He's easy enough to understand if you just ignore the youthfulness. Kurenai and Asuma both chuckled at this and Haruki turned to elbow Kakashi. Come on sensei, Haruki's hand shot out and snatched the orange book out of Kakashi's surprised grasp. You're the one who invited me and I am not going to be late. He nodded to the other two Jounin while holding the book out of a glowering Kakashi's reach before shining away. Kakashi disappeared a moment later, hot on his heels. Asuma and Kurenai blinked before glancing at each other. Have you noticed? Kurenai remarked. Recently, Kakashi's been a little different. Not as late as usual, Asuma agreed. Because of him? Haruki? Kurenai shrugged gracefully before the two started for the door. Maybe. But did you see Haruki-san when he grabbed Kakashi's book? I didn't even see his hand move. And Kakashi couldn't stop him. Asuma nodded contemplatively. He must be really fast. And he got Kakashi moving. His genin team might get collective heart attacks when he shows up on time. He scratched his head. Maybe I should invite Haruki to train with my team. They could definitely use the motivation. I'd like to see what he can do. Kurenai announced. He seems kind of interesting. But it's weird that none of us seem to know him. Asuma just frowned, glancing briefly in the direction where he knew Team 7 trained. That was strange. And now that he thought about it, he hadn't been able to sense Haruki's chakra signal at all, even when they were standing together. Not many could hide their chakra so well, and even less did it in their own village when they were amongst friends. Guy stared thoughtfully in the direction of the Team 7 training grounds as his team started on their taijutsu sets. There weren't many who actually knew what he was talking about underneath all the drama he thought was definitely necessary to brighten the world. Especially not the first time. Guy had been impressed when Haruki had offered his own opinion on the matter. Still, there was definitely something off about the redhead. For one, Guy hadn't missed the depression that had surfaced briefly on the other Jounin's face when he had said he liked autumn. That had actually been part of the reason why Guy had immediately offered to drag Haruki to training with them. The depth of that sorrow had troubled him greatly and he hadn't wanted to leave the redhead alone so soon after that. And for another, where had this man come from? Guy was sure he had never seen the red-haired Jounin before. Perhaps he had changed his appearance. But surely he would have at least recalled the name. Guy-sensei, are you alright? Guy blinked before smiling winningly down at his only female student. Of course. My youthfulness would not allow me to be anything but. Ten rolled her eyes but smiled good-naturedly and returned to her katas. Further away, Lee was challenging Niji to a youthful contest of who could do more high kicks and Niji was simply ignoring him but still doing said high kicks with deadly accuracy. Guy smiled broadly at his three students, putting thoughts of the mysterious Jounin to the back of his mind for the moment. They were almost ready. He would be entering them into the Chunin exams this year. Good morning. All three genin straightened from their warm-ups and spun around to blink at the approaching red-haired Jounin. Naruto was the first to speak up, greeting Haruki enthusiastically. Morning, Haruki-san. Naruto chirped brightly. Behind him, Sakura scowled at the blonde but bowed a little in the redhead's direction and greeted him shyly. Good morning, Haruki-san. Haruki nodded at the kunoichi, studying the more healthy flush to her cheeks. She hadn't developed much muscle yet and there was still some baby fat here and there but Haruki could see she was eating more regular meals now. He turned to the last genin of the group and nodded a greeting as well. Sasuke stared back at him with consideration before nodding as well. He seemed to contemplate something for a moment before finally asking politely, Haruki-san, would you be willing to spar with me? Haruki tilted his head thoughtfully, absently pushing a few stray locks of hair out of his eyes. He glanced back towards the village. Kakashi had managed to snatch his book back a minute before they had reached the training grounds and had disappeared to Kami knows where. It would be a while before the Kopinin showed up. He turned back to the waiting Uchiha. Are you finished your warm-up? Sasuke immediately nodded, moving away from Naruto and Sakura before getting into the standard Uchiha-style taijutsu stance. Not fair. Naruto complained, crossing his arms. Why does Sasuke team get to spar with you? Kakashi-sensei never spars with any of us. Haruki smiled faintly down at the blonde. He asked, Naruto. If you want, I'll spar with you afterwards. Naruto brightened at that, nodding readily as Haruki moved to stand opposite to Sasuke. Haruki shrugged his shoulders a few times before nodding at Sasuke. Whenever you're ready. The Uchiha darted forward a second later, lashing out with a fist to Haruki's abdomen. Haruki immediately blocked it before jumping smoothly over the follow-up sweep of Sasuke's leg. Haruki frowned faintly when an entire second passed as Sasuke drew back into a ready position before lashing out again, a series of punches and kicks that Haruki easily blocked or pushed aside. This was very boring. Dodging a kick that came from the side, Haruki started pushing back, blocking a fist and reaching out to tap the boy's left shoulder, adjusting a slightly wayward palm thrust before tapping at a rib, and then finally twisting effortlessly past the boy and tapping him on the back of the neck. Sasuke finally jumped back a few feet away, obvious frustration flashing across his face. Haruki held up a hand to momentarily halt the boy. Sasuke, your moves are predictable. Try. Haruki motioned vaguely at the boy in general. Improvising. Sasuke frowned heavily, wiping away beads of sweat that had gathered on his forehead. He seemed about to snap something back but stopped, watching the redhead carefully as he mentally reviewed the spars so far. On the side, Naruto was bouncing on the balls of his feet while Sakura shouted encouragement. A moment later, Sasuke rushed forward again, starting with another fist to the abdomen, but instead of dropping to the ground to sweep out the redhead's feet after his punch was blocked, the Uchiha used his other hand to balance on the ground and kicked his feet up to lash out at Haruki's jaw instead. Haruki easily dodged it but smiled inwardly. For some reason or another, Sasuke was listening to him. So, instead of just mostly blocking or dodging the next rain of blows the genin sent his way, Haruki started adjusting the strikes the boy used. Pushing a fist a little to the left one time and gently nudging a hip into a better alignment during a high kick another, he slowly mended some of the holes in the genin's fighting style. Sasuke seemed to realize what he was doing and accepted it wordlessly, continuing to throw punches and kicks at the jounin. Finally, panting hard but still determined, Sasuke leapt away and into the air, quickly bringing his hands together to form the seals for a jutsu as he started falling back to the ground. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Haruki had already recognized the signature hand signs and now quickly danced away, the fireball soaring harmlessly behind him even as he felt the heat stream past. The fireball quickly faded away and Haruki turned to look down at Sasuke, who was gasping for breath as he rested his hands on bent knees. But Onyx's eyes met his evenly and there was a certain amount of defiance in them as he stared back. Sasuke team. You cheated. Naruto bounded forward, Sakura a step behind, already reaching out to bop Naruto on the head. Sasuke-kun didn't cheat. She glanced hesitantly at Haruki. He didn't, right Haruki-san? Haruki glanced briefly at the two other genin before looking back at Sasuke. He remained silent for a few seconds and wondered if the boy would look away. He didn't. Satisfied, Haruki jerked his head a little and the hair tie that had been holding back his hair snapped, having been too close to the fireball to escape damage. Haruki watched impassively as all three genin stared wide-eyed when the hair tie fluttered to the ground and crimson locks fell around his shoulders again. Waiting until he caught Sasuke's gaze again, Haruki offered him a single nod and a faint smile of approval. Much better, Sasuke. The raven-haired genin straightened at the praise, eyes lighting up as a pleased smile tilted his lips for a moment. Haruki glanced at Naruto with an arched eyebrow. Naruto, I didn't say no ninjutsu. There is honor in battle, but we are ninja, and most of what normal people would consider underhanded, we call it fair game. And in a real fight, there are no rules. Your enemies will not abide by any standards you set. Understand? The blonde nodded, frowning hard as he digested this, and Haruki turned back to Sasuke. Cool down with some katas and drink some water. The redhead withdrew a scroll and unsealed a bottle for the boy. From now on, try developing your own fighting style. Your clan style is a good foundation to build up from, but you'll need more variation if you want to strengthen your taijutsu. Sasuke nodded attentively before sketching a half-bow, respect flickering in his eyes when he looked up again. Thanks, Haruki-san. Haruki managed a small nod, but almost reeled inside as he heard the genuine gratitude in the boy's voice. He couldn't recall Sasuke ever thanking anyone at this age. Then again, he had been the dead last back then. Sasuke was hardly going to thank him. My turn now, Haruki-san. Haruki smiled and nodded, glancing at a nearby tree as he waited for Naruto to finish a quick stretch. He had sensed the Kapinin's presence a moment before his spar with Sasuke began, and he now wondered what Kakashi was trying to do by letting Haruki spar with his students. Lazy bastard, Haruki muttered under his breath as Naruto got into position in front of him. Not going to pawn your students off on me, my ass. Ready, Haruki-san? Haruki studied the blonde with concealed amusement as the boy couldn't seem to stop moving from excitement. Whenever you are. Immediately, Naruto brought his hands together and Haruki really did smile at the familiarity of it. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 7 clones appeared around them, all holding kunai, and Haruki cocked his head and glanced around before focusing on the real Naruto again. Come then, he voiced, letting a challenge edge his tone. Let's see what you can do. All 8 Narutos grinned and charged, simultaneously lashing out with their kunai as soon as they reached the redhead. Haruki dodged the swipes without difficulty, noting the wide sweep of each reckless strike. Clumsy, Naruto, he called out as he continued to avoid the kunai. Don't just swing at my closest body part. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sasuke draw closer to their spar before restarting his katas again. That just wastes both energy and time. Aim at openings. If your opponent doesn't have openings, then make one. He ducked a rather wild swipe of a kunai from one of the clones before flipping back, balancing on one hand as his left leg came up, catching said clone under the chin and throwing him into the air. Following through, he twisted his body as his right leg came up as well and caught the clone from the side, neatly tossing him away and sending him crashing into the trunk of a tree. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke as Haruki righted himself again and watched the remaining Narutos back away. Make an opening. The Naruto near the back scratched his head. How do I do that? Surprise me. When Naruto still looked confused, Haruki clarified. Do something unpredictable, Naruto. You're good at that. Play to your strengths. Another moment of thought passed before a wide grin grew on the blonde's face. You asked for it. He called out almost gleefully as he brought his hands together. Harimu no Jutsu. Sakura immediately began yelling as 6 Narutos turned into beautiful naked blonde females. Haruki caught a glimpse of Sasuke wheeling around to face the other direction and heard a faint spluttering sound from the tree Kakashi was still sitting in. Grinning, he shook his head as he felt the real Naruto run at him from behind. Dodging at the last minute, his hand reached out and snagged the boy by the collar before tossing him neatly into the group of female clones. Good distraction, Naruto, Haruki called out cheerfully. But that won't always work. You need to follow up on it if it doesn't. I know. Haruki's gaze slid to the side as another Naruto came charging at him, leaping into the air with his kunai drawn. So the boy had made more Kage Bunshins behind the smoke his earlier jutsu had produced. Haruki smiled even as he sidestepped the Bunshin and flipped him to the ground face first where it dispersed. Good. Naruto was learning. 3 more Kage Bunshins came up from behind but Haruki caught 2 of them with quick sharp jabs to the abdomen before flipping away from the third. The Bunshin followed him though, hands balled into fists as he charged the redhead. Haruki glanced briefly at the ground as he balanced on his hands and quickly swiped up a familiar item, snapping it towards the Bunshin. The clone reeled backwards when the hair tie hit him between the eyes and Haruki quickly took the opportunity to swing around and sweep the clone's feet out from under him. Straightening again, he noted that the female clones had been dispersed but the Naruto clones were still going strong. There were nearly 2 dozen of them in the clearing now, scattered around in a loose circle around him. We've got you now. One Naruto shouted as they all charged with childlike battle cries. Haruki sighed, tucking a few stray locks of hair behind one ear as the clones descended on him, some coming from the air, others charging at a flat-out run. With the ease of someone who had done little save train, eat, sleep, and fight in open battle, Haruki launched into a counterattack, executing his own punches and kicks to disperse the clones one by one. Up in his chosen tree, Kakashi observed the spar, unable to look away. This was the first time he had seen Haruki fight and the grace and strength in each action had him mesmerized. Even earlier, during the spar with Sasuke when Haruki had chosen not to fight but to only silently fix the holes in the Uchiha's fighting style, Kakashi hadn't even pulled out his book. The way Haruki had adjusted each stance or punch had Kakashi wondering if Haruki had ever taught before. Now, the Kapinin absently speculated whether or not Haruki would agree to spar with him sometime. Kakashi suspected the redhead had yet to show even half of his real skill in taijutsu and he wanted to see how far he would have to push the other jounin for him to show his true strength. Leaning forward even more, he squinted suddenly, picking up some familiarity in the somewhat odd style Haruki was using. Wasn't that the Hyuga clan's gentle fist style? Haruki wasn't closing off any tenketsu points but he was definitely targeting certain areas with deadly precision. Where the hell had Haruki learned the Hyuga's prized taijutsu style? And it wasn't just the gentle fist. Haruki used a mix of martial arts, all molded together to form the unique style he now used with easy efficiency. There was the graceful stance and direct but subtle palm thrusts that Kakashi was sure was a variation of the taijutsu the Uchiha clan used, and as Haruki danced out of reach of the Naruto clone's attacks, Kakashi could also see bits and pieces of the taijutsu that the Nara clan usually stuck to, as well as, he leaned forward even further, ignoring the fact that he would have probably toppled out of the tree by now if he hadn't been a ninja. That was definitely the unique style only guy knew and taught to that equally disturbing protege of his. The redhead had just pulled off Konoha Senpu that Guy used and had created. But Haruki had just met Guy this morning. There was no way he could know that. Down below, Haruki finished off the last of the clones with a series of high kicks that sent all 3 Naruto lookalikes into the air, tumbling away head over heels and dispersing before they could hit the ground. Whirling around, he caught the fist that had been aimed at his back and with a gentle but deft twist only strong enough to throw the blonde off balance and spin him around, Haruki had Naruto's arm neatly pinned behind him as he flipped out a kunai and finished the spar by tapping the flat side of the weapon against the boy's left shoulder. "I believe this match goes to me," Haruki said mildly as Naruto craned his head around to scowl up at him. Smiling slightly, he released the blonde and Naruto scrambled up, shaking out his arm as Sasuke and Sakura approached them. "You're crazy strong, Haruki-san," Naruto complained as he flopped onto his back, blonde locks damp against his forehead. Sasuke came to a stop beside them and towed the blonde. Dobe. You need to get faster." Naruto glared up at the Uchiha, swatting away the genin's foot. "Shut up, team. I already know that, Naruto." Sakura had her hands on her hips and was scowling down at him. "Don't be so rude to Sasuke-kun. He's giving you good advice." Naruto huffed sulkily before sitting up and peering at Haruki, who had unsealed another water bottle and was now holding it out to the blonde. Naruto grinned and took it, downing half the bottle in one go. "Good job, Naruto." Haruki sank down to a crouch in front of the blonde. "Your use of Kage Bunshin is excellent. What you need to work on now is polishing up your taijutsu and, of course, increasing your speed. Right now though, I'm more concerned about your fighting style. You don't follow the standard style the academy teaches, and while that's good for keeping your attacks unpredictable, it also means you don't have a very strong foundation." Naruto frowned, glancing up at Sasuke, who was listening just as intently. "The senseis show us some stances in the standard style," Naruto admitted, rubbing the back of his head. "But we usually have to learn from the scrolls they give us." He made a face. "I don't like sitting all day studying." Sasuke snorted while Sakura just sighed, but Haruki nodded instead. "That's alright, not all shinobi learn best by studying. You're better at learning by doing, right?" At Naruto's immediate nod, Haruki stared thoughtfully at the blonde before glancing up at Sasuke. "Sasuke, if you were the one fighting Naruto earlier, what would have happened?" The Uchiha had an instant retort at the tip of his tongue. "I would have won." Haruki arched a challenging eyebrow even as Naruto protested loudly. "With no trouble." Sasuke's curt nod seemed to stall halfway through the motion as he glanced briefly down at Naruto. Then, with obvious reluctance, he admitted grudgingly, "I might have had some trouble defending against all the Kage Bunshins." His second jutsu, Haruki hid a smile at the boy's obvious embarrassment at this. Would have been distracting as well, but it would be his clones that would be dangerous since they can come at all sides. Haruki nodded. "How would you have defended against that then?" Sasuke cocked his head, a faint frown making its way onto his face. "I would have used my fireball jutsu to get rid of most of them. Because his taijutsu is sloppy, I would be able to dispatch any remaining clones by myself." Haruki nodded again and turned back to Naruto. "And you, Naruto? If you had been fighting Sasuke, what would you have done if he had countered by doing this?" Naruto scowled, striking an unconscious thinking pose as he dropped his chin in one hand. "I would have made more clones to distract him." Blue eyes suddenly sharpened slyly as he glanced up at his rival. And then, while he was busy with them, ID attack from his left side, from behind. Haruki's eyes narrowed as Sasuke started slightly. "Oh? And why would you do that?" Naruto grinned brightly as he pointed at Sasuke's left leg. "You hit Sasuke team 3 times their back when you were sparring with him. His left side is obviously not as well defended as his right side and his leg should be at least bruised from the spar. It's a weakness." Sasuke scoffed loudly but subtly shook out his left leg. Haruki smiled in approval. Naruto really did learn better by watching doing things hands-on. "Good observation, Naruto. In battle, every weakness should be exploited." He rose to his full height again, eyeing them both thoughtfully before nodding decisively. "Train together," he advised, much to all 3 Genin's surprise. "Both of you have weaknesses that the other can see through. Sasuke is more disciplined and has a better grasp of his own actions when he attacks, but Naruto has better instinct and he's good at improvising when he gets into tough situations. You can help each other improve in different areas. I think you'll find a spar between you two interesting." The 2 boys glanced at each other, curious but trying not to show it at the same time. Haruki smiled a little, ignoring the sadness that welled up inside him. In his timeline, Sasuke had been his favorite sparring partner. Every spar they had managed to fit in before things really went to hell had been truly enjoyable. Alright then, I've talked enough. Haruki turned to blink at the last of Team 7's genin. Sakura, would you like to spar? The kunoichi blushed a little, hands wringing uncomfortably as she glanced at Sasuke, who was suddenly concentrating on drinking more water. Maybe not right now. I don't think I'd do very well. Before Haruki could respond, Naruto, with his usual amount of non-existent tact, piped up, come on, Sakura-chan. It'll be fun. Sasuke team and I couldn't win either. But you could learn some things dash. Naruto. Haruki cut in, and Naruto's mouth closed with a click at the redhead's sharp tone, blue eyes wide when he caught sight of Sakura's rapidly reddening face. That's alright, Sakura. Haruki drew her attention again before she could lash out at the blonde. Actually, it's probably best that you don't spar right now. Kakashi has an exercise for all of you that I think you'll do especially well in. You'll probably move on to more advanced stuff today and you'll need your energy for that. Sakura blinked up at him in confusion, though she seemed a little relieved at the change of topic. What exercise? Oh yeah. Naruto scrambled to his feet, dusting his jumpsuit off. Kakashi-sensei said we were going to learn chakra control today. When did he say that? Sakura rounded on the blonde. Naruto grinned. Yesterday, after we had dinner with Haruki-san. Both Sasuke and Sakura turned to look at Haruki, who shrugged, trying not to scowl at his younger counterpart. Kakashi wanted to meet me, Naruto invited him around, and we all ended up eating at my place. Without waiting to hear what either of the other two genin thought about this, Haruki hurried on, turning to stare directly at the tree Kakashi was still sitting in. Speaking of Kakashi, why don't you come down and actually teach, sensei, or have you decided to just sit on the sidelines for the rest of the day? All three genin peered in the direction Haruki was looking at, and a second later, Kakashi dropped out of the tree, orange book in hand as he strolled towards them. Yo! You're late! Naruto and Sakura snapped as Sasuke looked on. This time though, none of them seemed particularly upset by the Jounin's tardiness. You were here all along too. Kakashi smiled at them and waved his orange book at them. Well, I was in the middle of a great chapter. Miki-chan seduced dash. He got no further than that before Haruki flipped out a kunai and eyed his orange book menacingly. Not in front of minors, Kakashi. Kakashi chuckled nervously and quickly tucked his book away. Behind Haruki, Sakura and Naruto were making faces and even Sasuke looked faintly disturbed. Well, I suppose we should get started on our training session today. You guys still have a D rank to finish afterwards. Follow me. As the three genin trailed after Kakashi into a more forested area of the training grounds, Haruki fell into step beside him. You've been watching since I started sparring with Sasuke, he commented. You could have come out sooner. Kakashi shrugged unrepentantly. It was interesting to watch. He paused to glance sidelong at the redhead. You knew what you were doing. Have you ever taught before? Haruki predictably stiffened and remained silent, gaze focused ahead. Once, he finally revealed without looking at the Kapinin. A long time ago. And only for a little while. Kakashi nodded and said nothing more. He knew he probably wouldn't get anything else out of the redhead if he continued to push. Now then, the group had come to a halt at the base of three moderately tall trees. You three are going to climb a tree. Climb a tree, sensei. Naruto's face fell as he glanced at the trees in front of them. How does that help? Climbing a tree without using your hands, Kakashi amended before moving forward to demonstrate. To the side, Haruki tuned the Kapinin out as he explained the concept to the three genin. He moved a little ways away where the trees were farther apart and scanned the small clearing. He could still see Team 7 from here and it was big enough for his jutsu. Returning to the others, he noted the mild annoyance on the two boys' face as they gazed up at Sakura, who was already sitting on one of the upper branches. Good. Quietly, he moved to where Kakashi was standing, drawing the Jounin's attention. Kakashi, may I teach Sakura how to walk on water? The Kapinin turned a puzzled eye on the redhead. I don't mind, but Naka River's pretty far from here. Haruki shook his head. I have a jutsu that Sakura can use to practice with. Kakashi's eye lit up with interest. It'll come too. The boys are probably going to be at it for a while. Haruki nodded and moved away, coming to a stop at the base of Sakura's tree. Sakura, he called up. You're pretty good at climbing trees already. If you want, I can teach you how to walk on water next. Perched on the branch, Sakura brightened a little. She had thought Haruki was only being nice when he had told her earlier that she would be good at this exercise, but it came pretty easily to her. She wasn't sure if he would really teach her something else since she had turned his offer down the first time, but the Jounin now waited patiently for her reply. Okay, she called down, concentrating chakra at her feet again before descending the tree. She jumped the last several feet and shot the redhead a surprised smile when he automatically reached out to steady her. He nodded back and motioned for her to follow him. You can do it, Sasuke-kun, she called out encouragingly as she passed the other two. Pausing, she added fairly, you too, Naruto. She felt Haruki's eyes on her and glanced up in time to catch a startled look passing over his usually neutral features, but the redhead looked away again before she could ask. Sakura-chan, where will you be going? Naruto's tone was tinged with envy and even Sasuke looked over at her. Flustered as she didn't really know, Sakura glanced up at Haruki again as he answered. Just over there, he nodded to a small clearing a short distance away. I just need a bit of space to use my jutsu. Sakura could practically feel the excitement emanating from the boys, and she could admit to a little curiosity herself as she accompanied the two Jounin to the clearing. Stepping away, Haruki brought his hands up and went through a long series of seals. Suetun, Kagami no Mizu. The air in front of the Jounin seemed to waver before a swirl of white chakra extended across the clearing, a thin plane of light briefly lighting up the area and then fading away again as the quiet sound of rippling water reached their ears. In front of them, a thin plane of water that took up the entire clearing but was only perhaps an inch thick floated about a foot above the ground. Drawing closer, Sakura's eyes widened as she realized that it was indeed a lake, quite literally, bottomless lake. Ducking her head, she swept her hand under the flat plane of water and found nothing but empty air beneath it. Mystified, she turned to face the red-haired Jounin even as Kakashi stepped up beside her to peer into the water. Sasuke and Naruto had completely abandoned their trees and had hurried over as well, enchanted by the jutsu. Impressive, Haruki, Kakashi commented, dipping a finger into the water and setting off a ripple effect. How deep is this? Haruki shrugged, stepping up beside them and looking pleased that he seemed to have caught their interest. I have no idea. I've never tried to touch the bottom. But how? Sakura stammered, dipping a hand into the clear lake. The water was cool against her skin. Besides the occasional ripple caused by some invisible wind that Sakura knew wasn't real because the wind that ruffled her hair was blowing in the opposite direction, the water was the clearest of blues. It was the most beautiful lake she had ever seen. It's a combination of water ninjutsu and space-time ninjutsu. Haruki explained. Basically, it's a dimensional pocket filled with water. Why water of mirrors? Sasuke inquired from the ground, having dropped into a crouch and was trying to stick one hand into the lake from underneath. Said hand passed completely through the plane of water, dry and untouched. Haruki pointed at the sky. It reflects the weather. Have you noticed the wind? It's blowing east today, but the ripples in the lake are moving west. It's a calm, sunny day, so the lake is calm and clear as well. His mouth twisted into an odd smile. In a storm though, this lake becomes a typhoon. That is so cool. Naruto crowed, looking about ready to dive in. Before he could move though, Kakashi's left hand had dropped onto his head and his right onto Sasuke's. Alright you two, Kakashi announced cheerfully. Back to work. You're supposed to be climbing trees. This lake is for Sakura right now. Visibly sulking, Naruto stalked back towards his tree, throwing longing looks over his shoulder as he reluctantly moved away. Sasuke lingered as well, a scowl etched on his face as he headed after Naruto. Both looked determined to master climbing trees before the day was out or die trying. Alright Sakura, Haruki turned to the pink-haired Kunoichi. It's the same concept as climbing a tree, but water is always moving so you'll find balancing that much harder. Give it a try. Sakura nodded resolutely and placed a foot on top of the water, testing the surface as she made sure her chakra coated her feet evenly. 3 small wobbly steps later, a particularly large ripple threw her off balance and she dropped into the lake with a loud splash. Spluttering as she came up again, she caught Haruki's gaze and felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as she clung to the thin edge of the lake. Hey! A hand dropped on top of her wet locks as the stern voice made her look up. None of that. You got 3 steps, Sakura. When I first started, I couldn't even get 1 step without soaking myself to the bone, and that was after I half killed myself learning how to climb a tree. A giggle slipped out before she could stop it and Sakura glanced apologetically up at the Jounin, but Haruki only grinned back at her, amusement clear in bright cerulean. Your chakra control is near perfect, so if anyone can get this down in a day, it's you. Now get back to work. I didn't summon a lake just to give people pep talks. This drew a grin from her even as Haruki stepped away, and she used the edge of the lake to heave herself out of the water to try again, confidence restored. Her chakra control was pretty good, not to mention Haruki did seem to think she could do it and the Jounin had yet to be wrong about anything. She was going to learn how to walk on water by the end of the day if it killed her. Retreating from the lakeside, Haruki settled himself against a tree and found himself joined by Kakashi a moment later. My students are going to be demanding a switch of senseis by the end of the day, the copy-nin told him mournfully. Haruki just rolled his eyes. Don't sell yourself short, Kakashi. Just pay them all equal attention and push them a bit. Kakashi tilted his head to study him. You handle them pretty well. Haruki shrugged. They remind me of my old team. Kakashi glanced across the clearing as Sakura fell in again. Your students? Haruki frowned and shook his head. No. No, my team. The team I was on. Who would you be then? Kakashi asked lightly, cautious of the redhead's reaction. Haruki's mouth twitched up into a bitter smile. Like Naruto, I guess. Kakashi mentally compared the two. One quiet, the other loud. One patient, the other brash. One calm, the other hot-tempered. But both friendly enough. Both unpredictable. And both charismatic. I can see that, he nodded, only to be met with a sad smile. You shouldn't, Haruki said quietly, tilting his head back to set his gaze on the morning sky. I never want to see him turn out like me. A frown crept onto his face as Kakashi studied the redhead. It was clearer right now, but no matter where he saw Haruki, yesterday in his apartment, back in the mission assignments room, even during the spars with Naruto and Sasuke, a shadow of something dark and unhappy always seemed to cling to the Jounin, never letting go. In rambling again, Kakashi blinked when cerulean eyes turned back to him and Haruki rubbed the back of his hand, much like Naruto, he noted. I still do that, now and then. Sorry. Kakashi shrugged, I smiling at him to assure the redhead that he didn't mind. The sadness still remained though, so he subtly led the conversation in another direction by nodding at Sakura. The kunoichi seemed to be able to walk 6 or 7 steps or so before slipping a bit, but she didn't completely fall in anymore. So I'm guessing that jutsu is yours. Haruki smiled a little. Yes. I created it several years ago. And you know space-time ninjutsu. It was not a question. Haruki hummed noncommittally. Some. Kakashi arched an eyebrow. You said that about Fuinjutsu. Haruki shrugged. It's true. Kakashi gave him a flat stare. You transferred those seals from paper to wall with a drop of your chakra. Most people who know some Fuinjutsu can't even get it off paper. I practiced a lot. And I suppose I have a knack for it. Kakashi just shook his head and glanced back at the lake. He was itching to try out this jutsu and was now kicking himself for keeping his Sharingan hidden earlier. Would you like to learn? Kakashi glanced over and scratched his head sheepishly at the amused smile on Haruki's face. Ah, well, you went through quite a lot of seals earlier. Use your eye then. I'll go through them one more time. Kakashi started, turning sharply to face the redhead. How did you know? He finally asked. Haruki's mouth pulled up into a grin that never reached his eyes. I know everything, Kakashi. Abruptly, he pushed off of the tree to face the copy-nin. So do you want to learn? Kakashi studied him for a moment longer before nodding silently and reaching up to uncover his eye. He wasn't sure what Haruki meant, but it wasn't as if it was a great secret either. He was called Konoha's copy-nin after all. As soon as his Sharingan focused on Haruki's hands, the redhead quickly went through the seals again and Kakashi memorized them, making a mental note to start practicing the jutsu as soon as he had some free time. Space-time ninjutsu was nothing to fool around with in a real fight if he didn't actually know how to use it properly. Thanks, Kakashi said as Haruki finished. He quickly hit his Sharingan again and the two were soon back to observing Sakura practice her chakra control. You give out your jutsus pretty easily, Kakashi remarked after a short silence. Haruki chuckled. I've got more in my arsenal, Kakashi. That jutsu I just showed you was one of the earliest I created. How old were you when you made it? 16. Maybe 17. Kakashi snapped his head around at this. You made a water and space-time ninjutsu combination when you were a chunin. Haruki opened his mouth as if to refute this but closed it again and settled on a stiff nod. There was a strange look on his face now, but it was gone when Kakashi blinked. But I've never seen enemy nin use it before. Surely someone would have been able to figure it out and copy it eventually. Kakashi pointed out. Haruki shrugged. All the enemy nin I use this jutsu against aren't in any condition to try to reproduce it. Kakashi blinked before nodding reluctantly. He supposed that made sense, but he had a feeling he was missing something here. There was a sudden yell from the trees and both Jounin turned to look as the sound startled Sakura enough that the kunoichi went under again. By the trees, Naruto seemed to have made it halfway, lost concentration, but had somehow managed to transfer chakra to his hands and was now hanging from a side branch by his palms. Kakashi's sweat dropped. That's different, he commented, watching the blonde flail in midair as he contemplated whether or not he should give his student a hand. I've never seen that happen before. Haruki smirked, leaning back against the tree again. Leave him. He'll figure out how to get down on his own. Kakashi shrugged and settled back as well. You have a lot of faith in him. With Fuinjutsu and this. Haruki turned to glance at Naruto, who would no doubt become Hokage one day. At Sasuke, who would become ANBU general and Naruto's trusted second. And at Sakura, who would be Naruto's head medic and the occasional nudge to keep the blonde focused. I have a lot of faith in all of them. Haruki turned a smile on Kakashi, less shadowed and more genuine. They'll be great one day. 3 hours later found Haruki walking through the village, having parted ways with Team 7 a few minutes earlier. Sakura could finally walk across the lake without falling in, though she still wobbled almost drunkenly every few steps. Naruto and Sasuke had managed to reach one of the topmost branches of their respective trees but had yet to actually stick there for longer than a few seconds. At that point, Kakashi had announced that it was time to do their D-rank mission and all three had reluctantly stopped their training. But while the boys had been smudged with dirt after all the times they had faceplanted back to earth, at least they were both still completely dry. Sakura on the other hand had been soaked from head to toe and highly embarrassed as she shivered next to her teammates. Haruki and Kakashi had taken one look at her before they had each picked up one of the boys and promptly dumped them into the lake. Naruto and Sasuke had surfaced quickly, one shouting while the other glared, but Sakura had started laughing even as she had made a valiant attempt to look sorry. All three had been ordered to go home for a change of clothes before meeting up again for their mission and Haruki had excused himself for the rest of the day, explaining that he still had a few errands to do before his mission tomorrow. All three children had had varying degrees of disappointment etched on their faces, but Kakashi had nodded and wished him good luck on his mission before ushering his students away. Now, Haruki found himself walking a familiar route down a side street to where one of his future students lived. In his timeline, he hadn't met Kisaragi Yusuke until the boy was 12 and he was 18 and saddled with a genin team by the Godame. It had taken one look for him to realize that the boy was being neglected and a grand total of 3 weeks to remove the boy from his home and into Haruki's. Up ahead, Haruki caught sight of a familiar head of dark brown near black hair, walking hand in hand with a tall man with similar features. Haruki stiffened but kept his distance. Yusuke had eventually told him that the negligence and occasional abuse had only started after his mother had died in a house fire. Before that, his father had been a good man and as good a father as anyone could ask for. Judging by the 6-year-old's smile as he listened to his father speak, the mother probably hadn't died yet, which meant that Yusuke still had an opportunity to keep his family intact. Haruki couldn't take the kid if there was nothing wrong. Weighing his options, he decided it was better this way. Yusuke was 6, not 12, and Haruki wouldn't be able to stick around as much. He wasn't a sensei anymore and he would probably need to leave the village from time to time. He wouldn't have time to look after a child on top of everything else. Mind made up, Haruki quickly summoned a small orange-furred fox. Stay out of sight and follow them, Haruki ordered softly. Protect them. Make sure nothing happens to any of them. The fox dipped his head to show he had understood before trotting away, disappearing into the hedges of a nearby house. Satisfied, Haruki turned and walked away. Perhaps, in 6 years, this time's Naruto would become a sensei again. And perhaps the Godame would see fit to give him the same 3 genin she had given Haruki in his time. Welcome. Haruki nodded a greeting at the smiling shop owner as he stepped into the bookstore. He hadn't actually been planning to stop by this place but his feet had taken him here and he had decided that another trip later would only waste time. He automatically moved to a section set apart from the other books, gaze skipping over the rows of distinctive orange spines before coming to rest on the plain brown covering of the book he was looking for. The shop owner blinked down in some puzzlement as Haruki brought the book over to the counter to pay. She had watched the Jounin head over to the special section set aside for the legendary Sanin's books, but most who wandered over there came back with at least a few volumes of Ika Ika. She shrugged mentally and quickly accepted the money that the handsome redhead held out. Oh well. The less perverts in Konoha the better. Thank you and please come again. Haruki nodded his thanks and headed for the door, tail of the utterly gutsy shinobi tucked under one arm. He had read it numerous times already, but the book was still his favorite read. Haruki's next stop was a clothing store for ninja and he immediately headed over to the coat section, scanning the trench coats on display with a critical eye. His old coat had been made by Shizun as a gift for becoming a NBU general. He had loved the short-sleeved, open-collared, chakra-infused, midnight blue coat with tongues of flames decorating the bottom edge, coupled with pockets on the outside for his hands and on the inside for storing weapons and poisons. He had worn it everywhere after Shizun had presented it to him, much to the woman's delight. The medic had admitted that she had based the design on his father's coat after hearing a description of it from Tsunade, but Haruki had been quick to assure her that he didn't mind. Unfortunately, said coat had been all but shredded barely halfway through his battle with Madara and he had been forced to leave it behind. The redhead finally decided on a simple dark brown trench coat, lightweight and durable and similar in cutting to his old one. It would do for now, until he could perhaps convince the Shizun in this timeline to make the coat again. He just didn't feel right without a long overcoat thrown on over his uniform. Haruki's final stop for the day was, of course, the Hokage Monument. Thinking back, he figured he had spent a good third of his time in Konoha simply sitting on the edge of the mountain staring out across the village and beyond that. The view was always excellent from so high up and he had done everything from drinking sake to napping to doing absolutely nothing up here. Standing here now with his eyes closed and the wind weaving through his hair, Haruki could almost pretend that he was still in his own time, back before Konoha had fallen, and was simply waiting for Team 7, all of Team 7, to join him on one of those rare days when they were all free from their duties for a few hours. With a sigh, his eyes blinked open and he settled down into his usual spot on the Hokage monument, leaning against one of the spikes of the Yandame's hair. With his eyes open, everything was different. There were no foreboding dark clouds on the horizon like there had been throughout the entire war. The clouds made it seem as if the battlefield was an entirely different world. It could be as bright and sunny as any summer day could be, but the world darkened and the temperature dropped the moment one stepped onto the battlefield. And the village. It was almost sleepy. Lazy. Careless. The village he had come to recognize as his own had always had a certain tension and weariness weighing it down, as if Konoha itself had been tired with the war. Now though, in the distance, Haruki could make out the civilians talking easily with one another and a smattering of shinobi exchanging easy conversation, happy and ignorant of all the things that would eventually lead this village to its doom. But that was what he was here for. The future was his burden to bear. His duty was to give these people a chance to live out their lives on their terms. And this time, he would not fail. Sunrise saw Haruki slipping out of the village unseen, hair tied back and brown coat flapping behind him as he ran through the forests of his home country. He never had much opportunity to just let loose and run to his heart's content anymore, but if he kept up this speed, he could run straight out of Hai no Kuni and right through Yuno Kuni and Shimo no Kuni before hitching a ride with Kurama to reach his destination in the promised day and a half. Hokage-sama. Sarutobi glanced up at the formal address as his two counselors filed into his office. Hamura, Koharu, he acknowledged. What can I do for you? Word has reached Konoha of a sudden explosion of chakra in Kumogakure, Koharu began stiffly. And there have been sightings of someone who appears to be Hyuga Hayashi in Yuno Kuni and Shimo no Kuni. We wish to know if you have received any information on the recent events. Sarutobi hid a satisfied smile and frowned thoughtfully instead. I have spoken to Hayashi-san, but he too has expressed his lack of knowledge on the matter. I have also checked over the recent missions, but we have not had many requests from either of those countries, and no Hyuga has been sent on the ones that have come to us. Both of his old teammates frowned and Hamura took over for the two. Yet there must be some sort of connection. The rumors that have leaked back to us were very clear that the man that was sighted has Byakugan eyes. Sarutobi mentally congratulated Haruki on a job well done, making a note to have the man's pay ready for him upon his return. Before he could come up with a reply though, rapid light footsteps reached their ears and all three of them turned to face the open doorway as a Chunin skidded to a stop just outside the office. Hokage-sama. The Chunin sketched a hasty bow in the general direction of all three shinobi in the office before focusing on Sarutobi. Sir, a man, definitely a Hyuga, just appeared at the gates. He claims to be Hyuga Hizashi. Sarutobi forced a look of surprise on his face as he watched his counselor stiffen with shock. Before either could say anything, Sarutobi quickly rose to his feet. You are certain he said Hizashi? The Chunin nodded. Yes sir, the Jounin at the gates asked several times. Sarutobi nodded curtly. I will go myself. Please go to the Hyuga compound and inform Hayashi-san of this development. The Chunin shook his head. Hayashi-sama is already there, Hokage-sama. I believe he sensed the man's chakra signal and went to verify it himself. Sarutobi came out from behind his desk. Then I think I will join him. Hamura. Koharu. Both counselors nodded grimly and all three shinobi swept out of the Hokage tower, the Chunin leading the way. As they passed one of the open windows in the hallway, Sarutobi instinctively glanced outside, just in time to catch a familiar flash of crimson disappearing over one of the nearby rooftops. This is a surprising turn of events indeed, Hokage-sama. Why was the council not informed of such a significant development? Once Hyuga Hizashi had been confirmed as Hyuga Hizashi through 2 blood tests, a verification of his chakra signal, curse seal, and Byakugan, and a somewhat lengthy interrogation that Hayashi adamantly insisted on performing, the council, the clan and civilian representatives, Danzo, the newly returned Hizashi, the Hokage, and Haruki had all assembled in the council chamber. Sarutobi hadn't wasted any time and had immediately launched into the heavily edited version of what had really happened, introducing Haruki and explaining his part in the discovery and resulting retrieval of the Hyuga clan head's brother. Haruki had stood at his shoulder, face about as helpful as a stone wall when the other occupants in the room all tried to gauge the redhead's reactions throughout Sarutobi's explanation. Currently, Hamura was staring frostily at Haruki even as he directed his question at Sarutobi, but it was Hayashi who answered, rising from his seat amongst the clan heads. This was a problem for the Hyuga clan to deal with, Hayashi stated coolly, white eyes surveying the room. When Kazama-san returned with news of my brother, I requested that this matter be dealt with quietly and discreetly. It could cause a potential war with Kyomogakure if a spy was discovered to have been in their territory, and by handling this issue as we have, Kyomo cannot claim ignorance of my brother's survival. His gaze hardened here. As they did on the attempted kidnapping of my eldest daughter 9 years ago. A quiet murmur spread across the room and Sarutobi watched Inoichi and Chuza nod in acceptance of this justification while Shikaku remained still in his seat, a calculating glint in his eyes as his attention remained on the redhead standing behind Sarutobi. He said nothing though, and the Sandame let his gaze move on to the other occupants of the room. The civilian representative was frowning heavily, occasionally glancing at Danzo further back in the room. Danzo remained expressionless, seemingly weighing Hayashi's words as Hamura and Koharu exchanged a few words between themselves. Very well, Hayashi-sama, Koharu accepted grudgingly, nodding at Hayashi as the man sat down again. This issue seems to have been handled quite efficiently. We will now be able to demand compensation from Kyomo's rakeage, which will be quite beneficial for Konoha. And wonderfully executed, Kazama-san, Inoichi added, blue-green eyes on the Jounin at Sarutobi's side. Haruki dipped his head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Inoichi-sama, but credit must also go to Hokage-sama and Hayashi-sama, as well as Hizashi-sama. I simply followed their plan as instructed. Sarutobi remained neutral on the outside but he felt a thrum of worry inside. The plan was undoubtedly suggested by Haruki. For the future Hokage to downplay his skill as a strategist, Sarutobi knew the redhead wanted to remain unnoticed for as long as possible. And to blatantly lie in front of the council, the Sandame wondered just how dangerous Danzo was to make Haruki this cautious. Of course, Chuza nodded from next to Inoichi even as Shikaku cocked his head and the interest on his face went up another notch. It was here though that Danzo finally spoke up, shifting forward to stare intently at Sarutobi. I do wonder though, Hokage-sama, where this Kazama-san came from. I have never seen his face before, nor do I recall sending any Jounin to Kyomo for infiltration. Sarutobi didn't even blink. I destroyed all his files, down to his academy records before sending him to Kyomo as a spy. If he had been caught and traced back to Konoha, Kyomo could demand much worse from us. And I do not remember needing to inform anyone before sending out any of my shinobi on a mission. The reprimand was subtle but sharp and Danzo reluctantly backed down, inclining his head as he settled back in his seat. There was a slightly tense silence as Sarutobi glanced around the room before speaking again. Then for now, this matter is closed. I will send a courier to Kyomogakure to request a meeting with the Raikage, but everything we have discussed here obviously cannot be leaked out. Concurrent nods responded this statement and Sarutobi continued. Then this meeting is adjourned. As everyone rose and bowed to the Hokage before making their way to the doors, Sarutobi glanced over his shoulder at the impassive redhead. Get some rest, Haruki-kun, he said softly. You've done very well. Come by the office tomorrow and I'll have your paycheck ready. Haruki blinked, his neutral features never shifting as he sketched a slight bow before heading to the door as well. He waited patiently for the others to file out first, never missing the drilling stare from across the room where Danzo still stayed seated, before making his own way out of the Hokage Tower. His shoulders relaxed slightly as he stepped outside but stiffened again when he felt a somewhat familiar presence approach him. Haruki-san. Haruki turned to face Shikaku, maintaining an iron control on his expression as he gazed back at the scarred features of one of his future best friend's father. He had gotten to know this man in his own timeline, spending hours at a time crouched over battle plans with him and his son. The Jounin commander had an odd, crooked smile on his face, the one Haruki had come to recognize as one that Shikaku always wore when he had discovered something particularly interesting. At the moment, it was an unnerving expression for Haruki. May I help you, Shikaku-sama? He asked politely, remembering the correct honorific for the strategist. Shikaku only waved a lazy hand in the air before tucking it back into his deerskin coat again. Shikaku is fine. And perhaps you could. Intelligent dark eyes sharpened as the smile widened fractionally. How would you like to play a game of shogi with me? That's it for part 2. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.